Chapter 1473. Xiao Mu pattered over to a thin bamboo that was more than a meter tall and flicked it with her finger. This bamboo was thin and short, and it didn't have any ornamental value. It was completely incomparable to the bamboo forest that the holy water sect's old sect master had raised back then. "Master, these really are spiritual bamboo shoots." Qiuqiu's voice abruptly rang out. Then, without needing her to lift a finger, two thin and soft vines had already burrowed out of her sleeves and directly dug up the ground, dragging in a small section of bamboo shoot. "Hee hee." Qiuqiu laughed happily. "Master, you're in luck. Walk further in and we'll dig up more spiritual bamboo shoots. At that time, we can also plant a bamboo forest on Paradise Planet. How about it?" The more Qiuqiu spoke, the more excited it became. "In the future, our Paradise Planet will have flowers, bamboos, and trees. Ha ha ha, don't you feel especially perfect?" Arbor nodded and then asked, "Flowers?" "Jasper begonia." Qiuqiu smiled proudly and said, "Master, I helped you plant a large sea of jasper begonia flowers. Do you like them? Come in and play if you have nothing to do." Arbor couldn't help but find it funny. She didn't expect that this little fellow would also steal the jasper begonia from her inner world into the paradise. "Don't drop the original pot. We still have to return it to grandmother later," Arbor exhorted. "Don't worry. Originally, there was a sumaru seed inside that jasper begonia that was wreaking havoc. Master, I took out the sumaru seed and planted it in the 100 Poison Valley." "Ah, is that so?" Arbor couldn't help but feel astonished. This sumaru seed was a type of poisonous grass seed. Why would it fall into the jasper begonia and almost kill it? It really was a bit strange. As Arbor spoke with Qiuqiu, she walked further into the clear stream and had Qiuqiu display its bandit nature. It dug up all the spiritual bamboo shoots that could be picked and dragged them back to the paradise. "Master, master. With little earth and little water's help now, the spiritual tea will probably take a while to grow. However, this spirit bamboo shoot doesn't have that many requirements. I reckon that if we raise it in our paradise for a few days, we'll be able to eat it soon. I saw that you dug up a lot of spiritual bamboo shoots. How could this caretaker who say that there are no spiritual bamboo shoots? Is he being dishonest? That's obvious." Qiuqiu chuckled. "This guy doesn't speak the truth. There's an 80% chance he's hiding something." Arbor knew what was going on and purposely kicked away the soil beside the stream so that the only spiritual bamboo shoot that Qiuqiu hadn't dug away could be seen. This bamboo shoot was simply too small and ugly, so Qiuqiu didn't like it. Fourth Princess Mo Shuang's eyes were sharp, and she couldn't help but cry out when she saw it. "Isn't that a spiritual bamboo shoot? Steward Hu, why did you say that you didn't find any spiritual bamboo shoots this year? Are you hiding something from Her Majesty the Queen? Oh my, in all honesty, how would I dare to deceive you all?" Steward Hu's expression didn't change and his heart didn't skip a beat. "Look at this little bamboo shoot. It's so crooked and wilted, in what way does it look like a spiritual bamboo shoot? Furthermore, if you all don't believe me, I can immediately have the servants cook this bamboo shoot for everyone to taste. This is definitely the most ordinary bamboo shoot and not a spiritual bamboo shoot. Hai Tang, where's the pot?" "The pot is here." Hai Tang took out a small black pot from her inner world and hugged it to her chest. She asked the Crown Princess with a serious expression, "Crown Princess, should we cook it now?" The little Crown Princess nodded vigorously. "Cook it and taste it." "Yes. Crown Princess." Chapter 1474. Seeing that everyone else was looking over dumbfoundedly, Hai Tang took out firewood and a rack from her inner world and placed the small black pot on top of it without another word. He casually took out a match and lit a fire. Then, he began to scrub the pot with the same method as before. After the water boiled, she threw the small bamboo shoots into the pot. The little crown princess also took out a handful of noodles from her inner world along with some ready-made shredded meat. Everyone looked at this master and servant pair dumbfoundedly. They were. Doing what? Aya, younger sister, I suddenly realized that I'm so hungry after smelling the aroma. It turns out that it's almost time for lunch. Give me a bowl later too. Xiaomi took out a bowl and chopsticks from her inner world and squatted next to the pot, staring at it eagerly. Empress Zhao's mouth twitched as she gazed speechlessly at this daughter-in-law. Commandery Princess Ethan, who was walking next to her, couldn't help but laugh. Is the crown princess cooking lunch? There's no share for you. Arbor gazed at her coldly before having Haitang scatter the noodles. It wasn't long before the pot of delicious and fragrant shredded meat and spiritual bamboo shoot noodles was finished. By this time, everyone had noticed that manager who was standing on the side, had beads of cold sweat on his forehead, looking like he would faint at any moment. Empress Zhao's heart jolted, and she sent a look to the green mammy. Nanny Qing understood. With a wave of her hand, more than a dozen guards came out from the dark and formed a fan-shaped encirclement. They surrounded Steward who was covered in cold sweat. Arbor took out a stack of bowls and filled a small half-bowl for Empress Zhao, Mou, Xiaomi, and Bailey Zhen. He had people pass it to them, and he and Haitang also got half a bowl each. The remaining half of the pot was left there for everyone to use. When everyone saw Empress Zhao and the others drink the soup in one gulp, their eyes narrowed into slits, looking very pleased. He hurriedly rushed forward to snatch the remaining half-pot of noodle soup. There were no more noodles left, but there was still some soup to drink. Those who were quick in grabbing quickly poured themselves half a bowl of soup, while those who were slow in grabbing could only watch helplessly. Mo Shuang and Yang Fengyan almost fought over 2 mouthfuls of soup. In the end, Mo Shuang gave a look to the accompanying guards to subdue Yang Fengyan, and she poured the last 2 mouthfuls of soup into her mouth. Once she drank it, whether her profound strength rose or not, it had nothing to do with her. In any case, she was just an ordinary person without any profound strength. She only felt that her mouth was overflowing with a fresh fragrance, and the 2 mouthfuls of spirit bamboo shoot soup simply left a rich aftertaste. How dare you? How dare you deceive the Empress Dowager and the Great King? Empress Zhao's face instantly darkened. 2 guards immediately stepped forward and kicked caretaker who was sweating profusely, to his knees. Manager who hurriedly complained, Your Majesty the Queen, please judge clearly. This lowly one doesn't dare to deceive the Great King and the Empress Dowager. This lowly one really didn't know that the spirit bamboo shoots had already sprouted. If this lowly one knew, this lowly one would naturally have sent people to dig them up and present them to Your Majesty the Empress Dowager. You're full of nonsense. Empress Zhao angrily rebuked, Tie him up. Search his residence. Manager whose face was filled with terror. He didn't know how things had developed to this point. These spirit bamboo shoots were clearly buried deep underground, and it wasn't as easy to dig up as ordinary bamboo shoots. Even he, who was stationed in this Yiting court all year round, accompanied by this bamboo forest, could only occasionally dig up 1 or 2 stalks of spirit bamboo shoots. Why was it that the crown princess could casually step on a stalk of spirit bamboo shoot? Very quickly, the people who were searching manager whose residence ran back to report to Empress Zhao. Chapter 1475. Your Highness, we found a large storeroom under manager whose room. There are many rations and supplies hidden inside, as well as large amounts of mystic currency and magnetite. Empress Zhao's expression instantly turned unsightly. She stared at manager who with a sharp gaze and said, Good. All these years, these spirit bamboo shoots have become tools for you to amass wealth. Manager who couldn't withstand the pressure anymore. He immediately knelt down and kowtowed repeatedly with a pale face, Your Highness, spare my life, Your Highness, spare my life. You unruly servant, you actually have the face to ask this consort to spare your life? Empress Xiao was so angry that she laughed instead. What are you still standing there for? Drag him out and chop him up for this consort. This unruly servant didn't consecrate the spirit bamboo shoots to the great king. Instead, he guarded this piece of land and became the great king himself. Good, 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 truly very good. Empress Xiao's eyes emitted a cold light. With a wave of her hand, 2 guards immediately stepped forward and dragged the wailing manager Hu out. No, you can't kill me. Your Highness the Queen. This time, Manager Hu was truly anxious. He panicked and said, this old servant was sent here by Her Highness Imperial Concubine Shu. You can't kill me. You can't kill me. Consort Chang's expression changed as she immediately looked towards her daughter-in-law, Shu Quan. Shu Quan's expression also changed several times as she hurriedly rebuked, nonsense, how could you be sent here by Her Highness Imperial Concubine Shu? You're clearly trying to use Her Highness Imperial Concubine Shu's name to deceive Her Highness the Queen. No, no. Manager Hu struggled with all his might and shouted with a pale face, I'll confess, I'll confess, I'll confess everything. Your Highness the Queen, tell me, this servant is just a lowly manager. If there wasn't an order from above, how could I dare to embezzle the spirit bamboo shoots and sell them all these years? Besides, even if I were to sell these precious spirit bamboo shoots, I would still need a channel to successfully exchange them for the materials I need, right? Empress Xiao pondered for a moment, then waved her hand to have the imperial bodyguards drag the steward back. She looked at him coldly and said, you're right. I don't think you have the guts to embezzle it. Tell me who is above you and who told you to do this. Shu Quan's eyelids twitched violently. She forcefully suppressed her flustered and short-of-breath emotions, and with a cold expression, she put on airs and shouted, wicked slave, you're about to die and you still dare to talk nonsense. Great King's second consort, don't interrupt now. Empress Xiao glanced at her coldly, a name already appearing in her mind. It's the Great King's son, it's all the Great King's son's orders. Steward Hu confessed everything in one go, and he continued to speak in one breath. In previous years, the Great King's son even instructed this servant to present 1/5 of the spirit bamboo shoots to Her Highness the Empress Dowager and His Majesty the Great King in the palace. But this year, for some reason, the Great King's son suddenly ran over to tell this servant that he's short on funds. It's not very convenient for him to do so, so he told this servant to keep all of the spirit bamboo shoots and not send a single one to the palace. You're speaking nonsense. Without waiting for the Great King's second consort Shu Quan to speak, Her Highness Consort Cheng cried out first. She pointed at Steward Hu, who was kneeling on the ground, and was so angry that her entire body was trembling non-stop. You damned lowly slave, someone come, someone come. Drag this lowly slave away from me. Consort Cheng, why are you in such a hurry? The matter hasn't even been discussed yet you're in such a hurry to have this servant die. Is it because you have a guilty conscience? Chapter 1476. Empress Xiao coldly glanced at Consort Cheng and indifferently waved her hand to stop her. She then turned to look at Manager Hu, who was kneeling on the ground. You wicked servant, you better think carefully before you speak. Who exactly instructed you to secretly hide the spiritual bamboo shoots and exchange them for private goods? It was His Highness the Great King. Manager Hu firmly believed that it was His Highness the Great King, as if he was biting onto a piece of fatty meat, refusing to let go even if he died. Consort Cheng was so angry that her face and neck turned red. Suddenly, she almost lost control and ran forward. She bared her fangs and brandished her claws, wanting to scratch Manager Hu to death. Don't speak nonsense. You're slandering my son. When we return to the palace, I will personally explain this matter to the Great King. Empress Xiao coldly smiled. When the time comes, I will also ask Consort Cheng to be present and explain everything clearly. Don't blame this consort for not giving you a chance to refute. Your Highness, please listen to me. This matter has nothing to do with my Jiaoer. Your Highness. Consort Cheng was sweating profusely and wanted to refute, but how could Empress Zhao be willing to listen to her? She waved her hand and said, this consort is tired. Green Mammy, you will temporarily take over all matters in this Yiting court. Yes, this servant obeys. Green Mammy slanted her mouth and disdainfully swept a glance at Consort Cheng and the great king's second consort Xu Quan. Like a rooster that had won a fight, she led everyone away and began to arrange everyone's food and lodging. After tossing and turning for the entire morning, Empress Zhao only drank a mouthful of broth and ate 2 chopsticks of noodles. Right now, she was so hungry that her chest was sticking to her back. She only wanted to rest as soon as possible. Arbor had a bountiful harvest, so she didn't care about how noisy this flock of orioles and swallows were and entered the court together with Princess Mi very quickly. The courtyard was allocated. Because this was only a private courtyard, with so many noble ladies arriving at once, it was naturally impossible for everyone to be assigned to a courtyard. Thus, they were randomly assigned to 2 or 3 people to a small courtyard. Little Crown Princess and Xiaomi were assigned to the same courtyard, and everyone was happy. However, Bai Li Zhen was assigned to the same place as Mo Shuang. She was really unhappy. After returning to their own courtyard, Arbor asked Hai Tang to cook a pot of spirit bamboo shoot shredded pork noodles. This pot of noodles was shared between the 3 of them, so naturally, they were able to eat until they were full. Princess Mi ate to her heart's content. She reached out to rub her belly and said, younger sister, do you think that mother-in-law of yours really doesn't know, or is she pretending not to know and taking advantage of the situation to make a fuss? What Princess Mi was talking about was naturally the matter of the spirit bamboo shoots. Xiao Mu sighed. Say, why do you think she brought us to this June Mountains Yiting court for no reason? Is it really just to entertain you princesses and noble ladies of other countries? That was because Empress Zhao had gathered enough evidence to use the excuse of entertaining the noble ladies to directly tear into Her Highness Consort Cheng. Princess Mi widened her eyes in shock. You? How did you know? I guessed. After Arbor finished the last mouthful of noodle soup, she threw the small bowl to Hai Tang to wash. Then, she walked towards the side room with her small hands folded. Eating and drinking to one's heart's content and having a nice afternoon nap, this is life. Who cares how much of a ruckus she caused outside? In any case, it was none of her business. Master, I have planted the spirit bamboo shoots. Qiuqiu's joyful voice sounded in her conscience. In the future, you will be a person with spirit bamboo shoots. Can spirit bamboo shoots still grow in that bamboo forest beside the clear stream? Arbor suddenly thought of a question. Qiuqiu stared blankly for a moment before saying weakly, the last spirit bamboo shoot was eaten by you guys when you were cooking noodles. That is to say, spirit bamboo shoots were really extinct in this Yiting court. Heh, scammer. Chapter 1477. Alright then, in any case. The spiritual bamboo shoots that grew in this Yiting court would eventually be taken away by a pig like Stewart Hu. It would be better to let her keep it and cultivate the spiritual bamboo shoots on a large scale. Arbor kicked off his shoes and fell onto the bed to take an afternoon nap. On the other side, Consort Cheng didn't even bother to bring over the lunch and kept pacing back and forth in the room while pinching her handkerchief. Other than Xu Quan, there were also 2 of the great king's concubines in the room, concubine Zhang and concubine Wu. Concubine Zhang had always been clumsy with words and wasn't very likable. When she saw Consort Cheng getting angry, she also kept her mouth shut and lowered her head, not daring to even breathe loudly. Concubine Wu, on the other hand, was smooth and slick. When she saw Consort Cheng like this, she hurriedly advised, Mother, don't be anxious. This is only Stewart Hu's one-sided statement. It's very easy for us to deal with a mere servant. There's still a chance for us to make a comeback. When Shu Quan heard this, she sighed. She had long warned her husband that before doing anything, he had to use his brain first. Don't just look for trouble and act rashly. The crown prince's position was so secure. It wasn't something that her husband could easily fight for. If he had stood by the crown prince's side early on, there wouldn't be so much trouble now. It was a pity that her words carried little weight. Her mother-in-law and husband had their own plans and considerations. She was like a piece of duckweed, tossing back and forth on the sea with no end in sight. Shu Quan, why aren't you saying anything? Compared to these two concubines, Consort Cheng trusted her daughter-in-law Shu Quan's brains more. However, Shu Quan didn't know what to say at this moment. When Consort Cheng saw her daughter-in-law's appearance, she couldn't help but become anxious. Shu Quan, say something. Mother, I feel that if this matter isn't handled properly, the great king's son might not be able to make a comeback in the future. What did you say? Consort Cheng immediately became anxious. It's not possible. Isn't it just a few lousy bamboo shoots? How could it possibly involve so many people? Shu Quan faintly glanced at Consort Cheng. Imperial Mother, Lord Husband is moving the cultivation resources of Her Highness the Empress Dowager, the Great King, and even the princes and grandsons. Her husband had exchanged these cultivation resources for cultivation coins and resources. What did he need so many cultivation coins and resources for? Do you think the Great King will let him go this time? Consort Cheng sat down on the stool stupidly. Shu Quan glanced at her coldly, shook her head, and walked out the door. Needless to say, on the surface, this matter was indeed the work of the Great King's son, but Consort Cheng and the entire Shu family should have known about it. Perhaps the Shu family had also benefited from it. She laughed self-deprecatingly. So what if she was being cautious? With such a father, mother, mother-in-law, and husband, she could forget about living a good life. Shu Quan. You're the smartest, so you should quickly think of a way to smooth things over. Shu Quan. Shu. Consort Cheng stared blankly as her daughter-in-law walked out without looking back. She angrily picked up a teacup and fiercely smashed it on the ground. This ingrate. Jiao respected her so much and asked her for advice on everything. In the end, at the most crucial moment, she was actually so heartless. Vice Consort Zhang was so frightened that she didn't dare say a word. Vice Consort Wu sneered and helped Consort Cheng sit down. Imperial Mother, I think we can't count on elder sister. Right now, we can only think of a way ourselves and think of a countermeasure before we return to the palace. Chapter 1478. Arbor slept for more than 2 hours before getting up. She couldn't care less about how badly battered Consort Cheng and the others were. The little fellow was sleeping quite soundly. There was no helping it. The battle was probably just around the corner. If she could sleep, she should hurry and sleep. Who knew what she would encounter tonight? Hai Tang brought in clean clothes. After washing up, Arbor was informed that the Great King's first consort was currently in the small courtyard and had been sitting there waiting for her for almost an entire afternoon. Shu Quan. The Great King's first consort's demure face appeared in front of Arbor's eyes. She nodded and said, "Invite her in." She didn't have much contact with Shu Quan normally, but after a few interactions, she felt that this Great King's first consort was very decent and generous. Compared to her acerbic mother, she was much better. Shu Quan quickly walked in and immediately saw the little crown princess sitting by the table. Without another word, she lifted her skirt and was about to kneel. However, a strange force supported her knees and didn't allow her to kneel. "Eldest sister-in-law, what are you doing?" Arbor glanced at her indifferently and said, "If you have something to say, sit down and talk." Shu Quan pursed her lips and froze there stiffly. She didn't know whether to get up or kneel. On the other hand, she, very cleverly helped her up and sent her to sit beside the little crown princess. Crown Princess. Shu Quan knows that the crime of being greedy for the ink spirit bamboo shoots is very serious. Husband, the entire king's estate, and even the Shu family wouldn't be safe and sound. Shu Quan isn't afraid of death and is willing to die with her husband. However, I would like to ask the crown princess to grant Shu Quan a small request and let my 3 children live. Arbor glanced at her coldly. Eldest sister-in-law, you should be begging the great king and the queen for this matter, not me. I know. Arbor raised his hand to stop her from continuing. I'm sure you know what the great king is like. To put it bluntly, the great king is so indecisive and overcautious. Is he the kind of person who would kill his eldest son? You know very well in your heart that your husband will be fine. With the great king's way of doing things, he will at most ground your husband for 5 years. Xiao Mu rolled her eyes. Shu Quan and she, were flabbergasted when they heard these somewhat disrespectful words. As for your 3 sons and daughters, they are all the great king's grandsons. If he can't even bear to kill his own sons, how could he possibly implicate his own grandsons? Arbor had long seen through the nature of the great king. Arbor faintly swept a glance at Shu Quan and said, Speak, what exactly are you planning? Since you're asking for my help, shouldn't you tell me the truth and be frank with me? Isn't that better? Shu Quan didn't know why, but when she looked at the little crown princess with such a cold expression, her eyes unknowingly filled with tears, and they gushed out drop by drop. Crown Princess. Shu Quan abruptly stood up and knelt again. Yes, I want to ask for your help. Just this once, not as the eldest sister-in-law, nor as the great king's consort. Purely as the mother of 3 children, I beg you to help me this once. I only want to be willful this once in my life. An hour later, Shu Quan solemnly bowed to the little crown princess. She stuffed a small medicine bottle under her sleeve and left quietly with the handkerchief in her hand tightly clenched. Other than the 4 people present, no one knew what had happened. She used the handkerchief to wipe the tears from the corners of her eyes and followed Shu Quan with a resolute expression. Chapter 1479. Haitang prepared a sumptuous dinner for the little crown princess. While she was serving the dishes, she asked with a dazed expression, Crown Princess, why are you helping the great king's first consort? If I want to help, I'll help. Why do you ask so many questions? Arbor said indifferently. Oh. Haitang answered blankly. This time, they'll definitely find a scapegoat for the spirit bamboo shoot incident. The great king doesn't want to watch his eldest son die, so old consort Shu and the Shu family will definitely be the scapegoats. Arbor drank a mouthful of the delicious fish soup and narrowed her eyes. She looked up at Haitang and said, Haitang, have you practiced cooking before? His Highness said that Haitang must learn anything that the crown princess isn't good at. For example, cooking, needlework, farming. That's enough. Arbor interrupted Haitang's words with a dark expression. She freaking felt like there were so many things that she didn't know. Haitang blinked. Crown Princess, don't worry. Just bring Haitang with you wherever you go in the future. Haitang knows how to kill people and steal their goods. Below, Haitang knows how to cook. I know everything. Arbor turned to look at the dazed child and couldn't help but burst out in laughter. Go away. This annoying fellow. Haitang cleaned up the table and walked out obediently. When she reached the door, she couldn't help but look back at Arbor. Crown Princess, you should actually smile more. Arbor paused and shook her head helplessly. Their itinerary this time was to spend 3 happy days in Yiting Court. But looking at the current situation, Her Majesty the Queen and the others weren't in a good mood. They would probably return to the palace tomorrow evening. After all, Empress Zhao was in a hurry to report the spirit bamboo shoot incident to the great king, and Consort Cheng couldn't eat or sleep well, so she wasn't in the mood to play. The two at the top didn't get along well, so their emotions naturally affected the people below. Arbor's bed was newly made, and she had prepared her own bedding. Now, she could roll around on the fragrant mattress. Perfect. Before sleeping, Arbor solemnly pulled Chirps out of the paradise and patted its little head. When Master falls asleep later, remember to wake me up if anything happens in the middle of the night. The little fat squirrel hugged its belly and nodded. In the end, not only did she have a good night's sleep, but when Xiao Mu opened her eyes, she saw that fat squirrel curled up on her pillow with its belly protruding, sleeping even more deeply than her. Xiao Mu was truly speechless. Sure enough, these adorable little animals were each more unreliable than the other. She said she liked beasts. Crown Prince Consort, you're awake. Haitang walked in and curtsied. Her Majesty the Queen sent word just now. Today, all the princesses and young misses will be allowed to play in Yiting Court. Return to the palace before sunset. Arbor nodded, thinking that it was more or less as she had predicted. Queen Zhao was impatient to return to the palace and report the spirit bamboo shoot incident to the great king. It didn't have much to do with her. Since the first half of the day was free time, then she might as well reluctantly wander around. After the master and servant pair brought along Princess Mi, the trio wandered around Yiting Court for less than an hour before they started to wander around unhappily. It just so happened that there was a mountain-leaning pavilion up ahead, and the scenery looked pretty good. The trio walked over and paused when they got close. They saw Yi and supporting Empress Zhao as they walked into the pavilion, chatting and laughing. Chapter 1480. The two people were followed by a dozen or so smiling royal servants. Some were holding umbrellas, some were carrying food boxes, and some were carrying teapots and teacups. It was obvious that they were going to the pavilion up ahead to have a private chat. Xiaomi blurted out, "Younger sister, why do I feel like that whatever commandery princess looks more like Her Majesty the Queen's daughter-in-law than you?" Arbor stared at commandery Princess Yi and coldly, and the latter also saw her when she turned around. At an angle that Empress Zhao couldn't see, she pursed her lips at her and smiled provocatively at her with the posture of a victor. Arbor was very disdainful of this. This woman had clearly already married into the vassal king of Nan's estate, so why was she still so oblivious to her status? At this time, the queen also saw Arbor and said with a nod, "Crown Princess, Princess Mi. If you don't have anything else to do, then come over and have a chat with me." Xiaomi tugged at Arbor's sleeve, and Arbor nodded. He walked up with Xiaomi and saluted according to etiquette before sitting down in the pavilion leaning against the mountain. This pavilion was built against the mountain and looked down from above, with a circle of bow-shaped seats set up around it. At a glance, one could see several floating clouds beneath their feet. If it were the early morning, it would definitely be a spectacular sight. After Yi and sat down, she instructed Su-er to bring over tea and pastries. She then eagerly boiled tea and laid out the pastries for Her Majesty the Queen. Sure enough, she acted more like a daughter-in-law than an actual daughter-in-law. Xiaomi pursed her lips and couldn't resist criticizing, "Oh, commandery Princess Yi, and why do you have to do this servant's work? You're degrading your status. We, the sons and daughters of the western wastelands, aren't that particular. Just some plain water will do." Commandery Princess Yi was not angry at Xiaomi's sarcastic remark about her being a servant. Instead, she even smiled at her good-naturedly. It was as if the shrew commandery Princess Yi that everyone saw as a joke on her wedding day no longer existed. She had returned to that elegant, dignified, and beautiful commandery Princess Yi. However, Arbor could clearly see great hostility and resentment in the woman's eyes. What was she pretending for? Xiao Mu swept her a glance before retracting her gaze. "Your Highness, please try this tea." A smile flitted across commandery Princess Yi's beautiful face, and she presented a plain patterned teacup to the queen with both hands. Empress Xiao nodded and motioned for her to put it down. Crown Princess, you. Empress Xiao's gaze fell on the little fellow's head. In addition to a unique phoenix hairpin, there was also a bright and glistening flower embedded in the hair. It's the jasper begonia flower. Empress Xiao blurted out. This jasper begonia looked even bigger than the one the Empress Dowager had. It looked really nice on the little crown princess's head. Arbor thought that the queen had taken a fancy to the only phoenix hairpin on her head. She hurriedly raised her hand to touch it and said, I can't give this to you. Mo Lien made this for me, so it's mine. The queen, on the side, Green Mammy rolled her eyes and said with a pout, Crown Princess, Her Majesty the Queen doesn't lack jewelry. Then that's good. The little crown princess put down her small hand and said with a nod, even if you like it, I won't give it to you. It's mine. The queen, why did she suddenly want to kill this daughter-in-law so much? Inhale, exhale, inhale, exhale. Her son had taken a fancy to her daughter-in-law, her son liked her, so she must be calm. She couldn't get angry, Chapter 1481. The queen took a deep breath and tried her best to put on an amiable expression, Don't be angry. I can't anger my daughter-in-law to death. Crown Princess, this queen is very fond of the jasper begonia you are wearing on your head. This flower is even bigger and brighter than the jasper begonia that this queen saw at Her Majesty the Queen Dowager's place. Oh! Only then did the little crown princess realize that Her Majesty the Queen was looking at the flower on her head. Speaking of this flower, it was because she had casually removed a stalk of jasper begonia from the paradise when she was washing up in the morning. Hai Tang was so fond of it that she insisted on snatching it and trimming 3 to 4 flower ornaments out of it. How could the little crown princess be so happy to wear a flower on her head? She wasn't a plant, so why would she wear a flower? Yet after Hai Tang put it on her head, she thought that it looked pretty good, so she also wore it. The little crown princess thought that she couldn't waste the remaining flower ornaments, so she warmed them up with medicine and put them into separate boxes. Now that the queen mentioned it, she took out 2 boxes, handing one to the queen and the other to the impatient Xiaomi, if you like it, then wear it. I have soaked this flower in medicine, so it should be able to stay bright for 10 days to half a month. Empress Xiao opened the box to take a look. She couldn't help feeling delighted when she saw the 2 exquisite, jade-colored flower ornaments inside. Needless to say, Xiaomi was grinning from ear to ear. She put away the box into her inner world and cupped her hands at Xiao Mu. Younger sis, thank you so much. Before Empress Xiao could reply with a smile, Commandery Princess Yi and widened her eyes in shock. She looked like she had been provoked, and she nearly jumped up from her stool. She rushed up to snatch the box in Empress Xiao's hands. Your Majesty the Queen, you mustn't. This flower is poisonous. Empress Xiao's eyelid jerked, and the box in her hands was nearly snatched away by Yi En. What are you doing? Empress Xiao's face darkened in displeasure. Your Majesty, please believe Yi En's words and immediately summon the royal physicians who came with you. If they can't detect that this flower is poisonous, then Yi En is willing to eat this flower. Ridiculous! Queen Zhao rebuked angrily. Then, she turned to look at the young crown prince consort with some suspicion in her eyes. The young crown prince consort shrugged nonchalantly and said, then let's invite the royal physician to examine it. This queen believes the crown prince consort. Queen Zhao glanced at Yi En coldly and said, Yi En, you truly were too disrespectful today. At the start, Empress Zhao's to Empress Zhao, Empress, and the queen's, Empress. She saw that the jasper begonia on the crown princess's head was pretty, so the crown princess gifted her the remaining begonia flowers. How could she have planned this out in advance when this matter was so random? How could she have made the crown princess poison the begonia flowers in advance? She wasn't an idiot. Empress Zhao glared at Yi En irritably. Alright, stop fooling around. Your Majesty, the Crown Princess herself said that she had soaked this flower in medicine. Arbor and Xiaomi both rolled their eyes. The little Crown Princess crossed her arms grumpily as she ordered Haitang, go invite the royal physicians over. If the test shows that there's nothing wrong with my flowers, and you said it yourself, eat these 2 flowers. Empress Xiao twitched her mouth. She couldn't bear to eat flowers even if and wanted to. How could such precious jasper begonia flowers be eaten? Soon, 2 royal physicians were summoned to the mountain-leaning pavilion. Chapter 1482. After the 2 people went up to perform the greetings, they conducted a strict and repeated test for poison on the 2 jasper begonia flowers inside Empress Xiao's box. The results naturally made and feel terrible. These flowers were actually not poisonous. Not only that, but the 2 royal physicians were also praising them endlessly, saying that these begonia flowers were extraordinarily effective. She wondered which great medical master had used this medicine, but this medicine was only beneficial to the human body and did not harm at all. Pen was truly flabbergasted when she heard this. She felt that these 2 royal physicians were forced by the crown princess's status to say such flattering words. Eat! The little crown princess grumpily shouted at Pen. Yet Empress Xiao quickly stuffed the box into her inner world and waved her hand calmly, saying, how can we let her eat such a good flower ornament? Let's just choose 2 other flowers for her to eat. Xiaomi, and turned to look at Empress Xiao in disbelief, simply not daring to believe her ears. Just now, what did Empress Xiao mean by that? That meant. Even Empress Xiao was not standing by her side anymore. But she was merely worried about Her Majesty the Queen's health, worried that she would be deceived by the Crown Princess. Going back on your word. Big liar. She clearly said that she would eat flowers, but now she wasn't eating them. She was lying to Jojo. The young Crown Prince Consort stood up in a huff. She didn't say anything as she strode out of the pavilion in a huff. Empress Xiao suddenly had a feeling that she had bullied a child. What was the meaning of this? Xiaomi twitched her mouth before standing up with a cough. Apologies, Your Majesty the Queen, I will be leaving first with the Crown Princess. When the little Crown Princess walked out of the pavilion, she suddenly turned around, her sharp gaze landing on Commandery Princess Pen. You were the one who put the sumaru seed in grandmother's jasper begonia, right? Commandery Princess Pen shuddered, and she reflexively shook her head and shouted, what sumaru? I don't know what you are talking about. The young Crown Princess merely swept her a cold glance. Since Pen had already explained everything with a guilty conscience, there was no need for her to continue asking. After all, in the entire Mo Kingdom capital, there was only one stalk of a precious flower like the jasper begonia in the hands of the Empress Dowager. Pen had mistakenly thought that her flowers were pruned from the jasper begonia potted plant that the Queen Dowager had discarded. This was also human nature. Only the person who had tampered with her grandmother's pot of jasper begonia could be sure that the jasper begonia was poisonous. Unfortunately, Pen did not know that there was currently a large sea of jasper crabapple flowers inside the little Crown Princess paradise. Arbor was so angry that she left. Xiaomi chased after her and said with a smile, all right, Jojo, don't worry. She won't eat flowers today, but I'll let her eat 10 liters of grass tomorrow to nourish her. Arbor's eyes lit up when he heard that. You want to dig up some smelly grass for her to eat? Okay. I'll have my subordinate specially go to the manure pit to find some thatch. Arbor mused that this was a good idea. This was the outcome of deceiving Jojo. Not long after the 2 left, they heard Commandery Princess Pen's exclamation from the mountain-leaning pavilion. Startled, Arbor turned around and saw 2 giant night-caw birds swooping onto the island in the middle of the lake in broad daylight. At this time, they were currently grabbing at the people inside the mountain-leaning pavilion. The Queen. Arbor turned around and ran toward the mountain-leaning pavilion without even thinking. Xiaomi followed closely behind as she nervously pulled out a long sword. However, before Arbor could run 2 steps, she lost her grip on the sword and it fell to the ground with a clang. Chapter 1483. Arbor's mouth involuntarily twitched. "Stay here and wait for me." After saying this, her figure flashed as she dashed off like a sharp arrow. "Hey, Jojo." Xiaomi was anxious, and she quickly picked up her sword from the ground before chasing after her figure. By the time Arbor reached the mountain-leaning pavilion, he saw that a giant night cowbird had already pounced into the crowd and was currently being attacked by several royal maidservants. Fortunately, these royal maidservants also knew a bit of martial arts, so they would not be insta-killed by the night cowbird. Arbor swiftly sent that night cowbird flying with a burst of mystic energy. He had already arrived in front of the green mammy and asked coldly, "Where is the queen?" "Her Majesty left first along a small path with Commandery Princess Yi and just now." The green mammy quickly replied, not daring to tarry. She was well aware of how powerful the crown princess was. If the crown princess could lend a helping hand, Her Majesty's side would be safer. As they spoke, a royal guard team also sprinted over and dealt with the night cowbird in mid-air in a well-trained manner. Arbor summoned Xinguan and the fat squirrel and had them stay here to help the royal guards deal with the night cowbird. This should be foolproof. Afterwards, he turned to tell Xiaomi, "I'm going to find the queen. You stay here and don't leave." After saying this, he did not wait for Xiaomi to reply before swiftly dashing off in the direction that the queen and Yi and had left in like a wisp of smoke. Meanwhile, Empress Xiao and Yi and were sprinting up the long corridor under the protection of the royal maidservants. Previously, 2 night cowbirds had suddenly attacked the crowd, and they were very intelligent. One of them stayed behind to deal with the royal maidservants, while the other followed the queen and Yi and closely. Fortunately, when the 2 people dashed down the short corridor, that night cowbird that was relentlessly pursuing them was scraped by the eaves of the corridor, and it was sent flying with a sharp cry. Empress Xiao hurriedly turned around and threw out a burst of Xian energy. In her haste, she missed the target and angered the night cowbird that was rolling on the ground. It got up and flapped its wings, viciously chasing after the 2 of them. Yi and shrieked and turned into the corridor in a panic, running toward the small garden up ahead. At this moment, 4 or 5 shadow guards caught up, and the pressure on the queen's side was greatly reduced. The shadow guard surrounded and attacked the night cowbird. At the same time, they turned to Empress Xiao and called out, "Nyang Nyang, you go first." Empress Xiao nodded and said, "Be careful," before following Yi and to the other end of the art gallery. There were many flowers and plants planted on both sides of the long corridor. Normally, they looked very pleasing to the eye, but when they were running for their lives, they were always tangled up by the branches and leaves, making them very unsightly. Yi and ran to the end of the long corridor in a spurt of energy. Just as she was about to pass through the small arched door, a pair of rotting wings suddenly dropped down in front of her. She saw something that looked like a long-necked crane abruptly appear in front of Yi En. It suddenly opened its monstrous mouth and bit at Yi En's arm. "Ah!" Yi En shrieked with a pale face as she covered her mouth with both hands. The queen rushed over with flying steps. Then, she picked up the spiritual dagger in her hand, and threw it over. The dagger carried a trace of flowing light, and pierced straight into the long-necked crane's head. It immediately fell to the ground. The queen quickly ran up and pulled out the short blade from the long-necked zombie crane's head. She wiped the blade carelessly with a handkerchief before pulling Yi En along and saying, "Let's go quickly, what are you spacing out for?" Yi En quivered and quickly nodded. She then passed through the small garden with Empress Xiao and ran toward the main entrance of Yiting Court. Chapter 1484. Just as the 2 people passed through the garden path, they saw 4 to 5 long-necked zombie cranes swooping down from mid-air. Anxious, Queen Zhao stared at the spirit artifact dagger in her hand and subconsciously swung it. In a split second, the dagger suddenly expanded by a dozen or so inches and turned into a treasured sword. Without any explanation, it cut off the head of one of the corpse cranes. This spiritual weapon short blade was given to her by Arbor previously. Back then, it was the giant ape who seized it from Northern Wei's Fifth Highness, Wei Nanshu. Arbor had given it to Empress Zhao as a present, so it had saved her life this time. While Empress Zhao was fighting the remaining zombie cranes, and had already found an opening to slip away first. When Empress Zhao finished dealing with those zombie cranes and looked back, she saw that and had already run to the pavilion on the other side, with one foot about to enter the pavilion. Empress Zhao also quickly ran over. Right now, she was already exhibiting an extraordinary speed, so she didn't care about her image when she was fleeing for her life. She dashed over in a disheveled manner, and just as she reached the bottom of the steps, she heard the stern cries of the zombie cranes in midair. At this time, she already appeared to be mentally and physically exhausted after a series of battles. As a result, she didn't even dare to look back as she quickly ran up the steps. Just as she was about to dash into the pavilion with and to take shelter temporarily, she saw the two iron doors abruptly slam shut in front of her. Empress Zhao stared at those two closed doors in shock. Unable to stop in time, she bumped into the tightly shut doors with a bang. She couldn't resist pounding on the doors as she shrieked, Ethan, hurry and open the door. Ethan was scared to death, so how would she dare to open the door? She hastily braced her back against the door as she shook her head in fright. No, I can't, Your Majesty. There are too many zombie cranes outside, so I can't open the door. The queen simply didn't dare to believe her ears. That commandery princess who expressed her filial piety to her day in and day out, wishing that she could treat her as her own mother-in-law. Such a demure, elegant, and beautiful commandery princess would actually treat her like this at a critical moment. The queen turned around and saw a group of over 100 corpse cranes flying towards her. She had already dealt with a few corpse cranes earlier, so how could she have the strength to continue? He couldn't help but think to himself, my life is over. Empress Zhao's face turned snow white in a split second. She turned around and patted the tightly shut iron door, unwilling to give up. Ethan, let me in. On the other side of the door, Ethan once again fixed the door sills on the door. Her entire body was trembling uncontrollably, drenched in sweat, as though she had been fished out of the river. No way. She couldn't open the door. With her mediocre skills, if she opened the door, she would die together with Empress Zhao. She was still so young, only 17 years old. She couldn't die like this. In any case, Empress Zhao was also getting on in years, so she could just die by herself. Don't implicate her. Ah! Hearing Empress Zhao's screams outside the door, Anne's heart clenched tightly. She clutched the front of her clothes as she muttered to herself, I'm not being selfish, I'm not being selfish. I just don't want to die, I don't want to die, I don't want to die. She covered her ears with her hands as she hastily ran into the attic. She hid at the bottom of the stairs and hugged herself into a ball, not daring to make a sound while trembling. Queen Zhao was drenched in cold sweat as she fought against the flying corpse cranes in a life-and-death struggle. Chapter 1485. She really didn't expect that this trip to Yiting Court would be the day of her death. Empress Zhao couldn't help but smile sadly. She didn't expect that after scheming and scheming, she would end up including her own life. However, she didn't regret it. Consort Cheng and that restless son of hers had delusions of making a move against her crown prince. She naturally had to deal with them before they succeeded so as to avoid harming her son. After Empress Zhao killed another zombie crane, her right arm felt sore and limp, and it drooped down powerlessly. She chuckled self-mockingly as she looked at the flock of zombie cranes that kept pouncing toward her. It turned out that no one could remain calm in the face of death. Because this kind of death was so unacceptable. Roar! After the giant ape's furious roar, the earth trembled incessantly. The giant ape kicked aside 2 zombie cranes and ran toward her with a thud. Empress Xiao looked up in shock and saw a stoic-faced little lady jumping down from the giant ape's head. After glancing at her, she directly started cleaning up the surrounding zombie cranes without a second word. Countless vines squirmed out from her sleeves and whipped at the surrounding zombie cranes. Accompanied by several hundred ice blades piercing through the air, all the approaching zombie cranes were severely injured by her thunderous methods. Empress Xiao only felt her eyes heat up, and an indescribable emotion swelled up in her chest. Sure enough. It was still better to kiss a daughter-in-law. A coquettish bitch like and really couldn't be trusted. No matter how critical she was of this little stoic daughter-in-law before, her daughter-in-law still ran over to save her without any hesitation for her son's sake when encountering such a crisis. However, Empress Xiao's heart contracted tightly. As she watched the little stoic plunging into the zombie crane flock, her palms involuntarily broke out in cold sweat. This was an encirclement of several hundred zombie cranes. However, Empress Xiao's state of mind soon relaxed slightly. Following the crown princess's appearance, several hundred hidden night pavilions guards also swarmed over. With everyone working together, it would only take minutes to clean up this flock of zombie cranes. Seeing that the situation was under control, the little crown princess quickly flashed to the queen. "Royal Mother, are you all right?" Empress Xiao shook her head with tears brimming in her eyes. She grasped her daughter-in-law's arm tightly. "I'm fine, Royal Mother is fine." This stoic-faced daughter-in-law of hers only looked colder than other people, but after interacting with her for a long time, one would discover that she was still very warm on the inside. "It's good that you're fine." The crown princess's speech, Empress Xiao's, bang, Wenzi's as a heavy blow. An's shriek erupted from inside, followed by the extremely sharp sound of fingernails crawling on the door. Empress TSS. Xiao Mu pushed the queen to the side and kicked open that iron door with a vigorous kick. That iron gate weighed 500 kilograms, but his daughter-in-law was truly valiant. With this kick, that gate collapsed inwards with a loud rumble. Empress Xiao was shocked and couldn't help but sigh ruefully. If this kick landed on a person's body, it would definitely be a kick that could take that person's life. Following the iron gate's collapse, An's disheveled figure rolled out from inside, followed by 2 squawking zombie cranes. 2 rattan vines whipped at the zombie cranes, and with 2 bangs, the zombie cranes' heads exploded. Chapter 1486. These 2 zombie cranes had charged in from the second floor's fence and flew to the first floor's pavilion. They found Ethan, who was hiding in the stairwell, before launching an attack on her. At this time, Ethan had lost all color in her face, and she was trembling all over. Meanwhile, Empress Xiao's expression had also turned very unsightly when she saw this woman. When she recalled how this woman had shut the iron gate tightly in front of her, selfishly not letting her in to hide, the fury in Empress Xiao's chest could not be soothed no matter what. Arbor drew an ice sword and aimed it at Commandery Princess En's chest. He asked with an icy expression, "You were caught?" En immediately shook her head like a rattledrum. She looked at the young crown princess in horror and screeched repeatedly, "No, no, no. I'm not injured, I'm not. Look, look." En hastily exposed her arms. Sure enough, there was not a single wound on her snow-white arms. I have a defensive mystic weapon. I won't be injured," En said hastily. Empress Xiao swept her a glance with a sneer before turning to leave with Arbor with a harumph. En's complexion turned ghastly pale at once. When she recalled what she had done to the queen, she couldn't help but beat her chest in regret. Great, now that the Queen Dowager did not like her, even Her Majesty the Queen would not like her after today. Damn it! How could she maintain a foothold in the royal palace like this? Seeing Empress Zhao dragging her youngest daughter-in-law away without looking back, Ethan was inwardly resentful. However, she had only taken a few steps down the steps with her head hung low. She suddenly paused when she felt a tingling itch near her navel. When she touched it with her hand, she actually felt several drops of blood. Ian was shocked and hurriedly lowered her head to look. With a pair of trembling snow-white hands, she slowly lifted up her torn clothes a little. Her pupils contracted. Sure enough, Ian saw that there was a small, shallow wound next to her navel, and there were even traces of blood seeping out. How was this possible? Ian's face instantly turned ghastly pale, and her legs swayed as if she was about to fall over. Could it be that when the two corpse cranes pounced on her just now, they were accidentally torn apart by their sharp claws? Ian's body swayed at once, and she looked like the sky was about to collapse. No, nothing will happen. Looking at her skin, it is still bleeding. Since it is bleeding, it means that there is no problem. If they were zombified, it was impossible for them to bleed. Yes, that must be it. Ian took a deep breath and kept consoling herself. When she looked up again, she saw that the little crown princess and Empress Zhao had gone far away. She didn't dare to delay any longer and hurriedly chased after them. Afraid that the little crown princess would discover the wound near her navel, Ian hastily moved her belt up to cover the wound. Fortunately, that wound was relatively shallow, and it stopped moving after a few drops of blood seeped out. As a result, no one would be able to tell that there was a small wound on her stomach. At this time, the stoic-faced little crown princess suddenly turned around and gazed at her suspiciously. Ian was startled, and she reflexively tensed up her body. She looked at her with slight trepidation. Grand Crown Princess, I think we had better leave this place as soon as possible. What are you panicking for? Arbor gazed at her coldly. She had already received the news. The well-trained hidden guards had split up into teams to clean up the corpse cranes. Meanwhile, Consort Cheng, Lu Fei, and the other royal concubines had only received a bit of shock, and they had already been brought to the main hall by the guards. Chapter 1487. After all, they had made ample preparations beforehand. As long as anyone dared to cause trouble in Yiting Court, regardless of whether they were corpse cranes or night cowbirds, they would not be able to escape the fate of being exterminated. However, the other party had caused such a huge commotion just to scare these weak imperial concubines. Arbor frowned slightly as she escorted Empress Zhao and the others to the main hall to meet up with Consort Cheng, Lu Fei, and the others. Xiaomi quickly walked over. Seeing that she was fine, she couldn't help but sigh in relief. How is it outside? There are still many corpse cranes outside. The guards have already formed teams to clear them out. Everyone, don't go out for now. Ao Yi, who was following behind the little crown princess, answered very naturally. Stay here. Arbor turned and walked out. Empress Zhao hastily grabbed her small hand. Where are you going? Stay here for now and wait for the commotion outside to calm down before going out. It's fine. Arbor calmly pulled Empress Zhao's hand away. I'll go out and take a look. I'll be right back. With that, her figure flashed and quickly disappeared out the door. Ao Yi naturally followed closely behind. The Crown Prince had guessed correctly that the organization behind the scenes had made a move, but such a small-scale attack was unexpected. Arbor had originally thought that they would send hundreds or thousands of zombies to attack. Presumably, it was unrealistic to mobilize a large number of zombies within northernmost fortifications. Therefore, these corpse cranes that could fly became their best choice. Unfortunately, there were too few of them to achieve the desired effect. Arbor pursed her lips and quickly walked to the entrance of Yiting Court to take a look. Ao Yi, did the Crown Prince say when he will be coming? Many corpse cranes were scattered at the entrance of Yiting Court. They must have been in a fierce battle with the hidden night pavilion. After a while, Yi did not speak. Arbor's head slightly exploded. She abruptly turned her head and came face to face with a stiff face covered in rotten flesh. That zombie had grown a pair of incomplete wings on its back. It opened its mouth and moved very quickly to attack her. It opened its mouth so wide that it was almost as wide as its face. It opened to an incomprehensible extent, as if the only thing left on its face was that mouth. Crack! One of Arbor's ice blades was crushed by the undead hag's huge fangs. It chewed and swallowed the ice blade. Heh! Arbor sneered and quickly stuck a teleportation talisman on himself. With a flash of light, he was already several hundred meters behind the corpse puppet. A wood spirit flew up and instantly condensed into a giant man-eating flower. It opened its mouth and bit at the corpse puppet. The giant man-eating flower swallowed the corpse puppet in one gulp, and its mouth, which was filled with sharp teeth, began to chew. All of a sudden, the man-eating flower formed by the wood spirits began to tremble. It opened its mouth as if it had been choked and spat out the corpse puppet with red skin and green mucus. Roar! The undead hag seemed to be very sullen as it roared at Arbor. However, several dozen zombie cranes swooped towards Xiao Mu, each of them attacking her without regard for their lives. It seemed that this gargantuan corpse puppet had already evolved to a fifth-grade corpse puppet. Arbor's understanding of zombies was broken. After all, in her previous life, she had only encountered fifth-grade corpse puppets at the time of her death. She did not know that the corpse puppets she had encountered in the lower star domain could only be considered low-level corpse puppets at best. Chapter 1488. The one in front of her was clearly on the verge of evolving into a mid-level zombie. This zombie had grown a pair of wings on its back. Although the wings were still very weak right now, they were basically useless. There was no guarantee that they would become extremely powerful in the future. In addition, this zombie was beginning to have the ability to command. In the past, the low-level zombies only knew how to attack without thinking. But now, it was different. This zombie that was about to become a mid-level zombie could use its roars to command its subordinates to attack a single point. After Arbor used her vine to send a few corpse cranes flying, she leaped onto the giant ape's head. With a tap of her foot, she chased after the mid-level zombie that had retreated back into the flock of corpse cranes. Whoosh! 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 Arbor waved her hand, and countless ice crystals flew toward the zombie. At the same time, her slender figure had already arrived in front of the mid-level zombie. The startled swan dagger suddenly flew out of her conscious and directly attacked the zombie's head, flying over its head with a whoosh. The mid-level zombie tilted its head, dodging the startled swan dagger's attack. As if sensing the great danger of death, it suddenly roared like a madman, attracting even more corpse cranes. Suddenly, a shocking bolt of lightning and fire landed on the mid-level zombie with a boom. Without waiting for the zombie to struggle, it was roasted to cinders by the sudden bolt of lightning and fire. Arbor was slightly alarmed. She only felt that this person's attack was swift and fierce. His cultivation was probably on par with Mo Lien's. She quickly turned her head and first glanced at Aoyi, who was lying on the ground, unable to get up. When she saw that he was fine, she couldn't help but relax. Then, she looked up at the man who had suddenly floated in front of her. Arbor opened her mouth slightly, and her body inexplicably entered a state of alert in an instant. This was the first time she had met young Master Omega Kotoku face to face since leaving the Qin estate. Her heart trembled, and her small face turned slightly pale. The second young master in front of her was wearing a light purple robe. His flowing black hair was slightly scattered by the wind. It's this face. Xiao Mu was startled, and she suddenly reached out to touch the defensive boundary that had encircled her. This sudden feeling of restraint almost suffocated Arbor. He kicked the transparent barrier of the defensive barrier and said coldly, "Let go." Let's talk. A complicated look flashed across the second young master's eyes. He suddenly reached out and subdued her. Without saying a word, he grabbed her wrist and disappeared into the air with her in a flash. After a large group of guards appeared, they looked to the left and right with a puzzled expression on their faces. Many crane corpses lay on the ground. Stay Up Late was lying on one side, unconscious. As for the crown princess, she was nowhere to be seen. Where did he go? The guards anxiously shook Aoyi awake. Then, they started a carpet search around Yating Court, looking for the crown princess everywhere. At this time, the young crown princess was no longer in Yating Court. She had been brought by young Master Omega Kotoku to an old residence on the outskirts of the Mo Kingdom capital. At this time, she was glaring at the man in front of her with icy eyes. If you don't let go of me, I can guarantee that you will regret it later. The second young master sighed, his gaze firmly landing on her. Jojo, I had a dream. A very, very long dream. In the dream, I saw you, and I saw myself. Bye-bye. Chapter 1489. In the main hall of Yating Court, all the concubines and noble ladies waited anxiously. The main door was shut for a long time until a guard pushed it open and entered. What's the situation outside? Where's the crown princess? Why hasn't the crown princess returned? Xiaomi hurriedly stepped forward and asked, why aren't you saying anything? Princess, princess, your majesty the queen. The crown princess, she. Bang! A loud sound interrupted the guard's words. Sensing that the sound came from above, the group of powerless concubines and noble ladies involuntarily cried out in alarm and looked up. Gotcha! A small piece of tile was stepped down from the roof. Everyone saw a sharp corpse crane's claw reach in through the crack and couldn't help but huddle together in fright. Aya, we can't be surrounded by a group of corpse cranes, right? Fourth Princess Mo Shuang suddenly shrieked, startling her mother, Lu Fei, who was sitting beside her. Seeing the queen and consort Cheng glaring angrily at her, Lu Fei hastily raised her hand to stop the noisy fourth princess. Mo Shuang, shut up. How can I shut up? Now that we're facing a great disaster, are you not even giving me the chance to speak the truth? Mo Shuang jumped up from her stool and paced back and forth in front of everyone. If this continues, we'll all be finished. Hurry and think of a way to charge out. Bailey Zhen withdrew the smile on her face and suddenly summoned a double-winged golden-striped leopard. She turned around and shouted at Qin Susu and Duan Siren, let's go, we'll kill our way out. Everyone, wait a little longer. We've already notified His Highness Group. I believe they'll come to rescue us soon. Bang bang. The corpse crane's claw once again stepped down a few tiles on the roof. This time, the group of noble ladies looked up and saw half of the corpse crane's rotten face. Ah! Yang Fengyan jumped up in panic and grabbed Qin Susu beside her. Susu, what do we do? Hurry and take me out of here, hurry and take me away from here. Miss Biao, you stay here. Qin Susu brushed away Yang Fengyan's hand with a serious face. She got up and looked at Bai Lizhen, who was sitting on the back of the double-winged golden-striped leopard. She nodded and rushed out the door with Duan Siren and the others. Qin Susu and Duan Siren both summoned their mystical beasts, the green-eyed spirit wolf and the fire-furred rabbit. As soon as they stepped out of the door, they saw more than 10 corpse cranes pouncing in their direction. The three of them worked together and shot their profound energy in all directions. Very quickly, they eliminated those corpse cranes that pounced in front of them. When he looked up, he saw 4 to 5 corpse cranes circling around the roof of the main hall. There weren't many of them, but these long-necked cranes had sharper claws and could tear the roof tiles apart in a few moves. In a flash, the three of them flew up to the roof at the same time. They were about to get rid of the corpse cranes. Suddenly, a loud roar came from behind. Qin Susu, Duan Siren, and Bai Lishen immediately felt their hair stand on end as they turned around. The three of them instantly formed a triangle, allowing them to see the situation from three different directions. Following the loud roar was a corpse puppet with a pair of incomplete wings on its back. It was extremely ugly. As it moved, the rotten flesh on its body fell off piece by piece. Duan Siren almost vomited her dinner from last night. This corpse puppet gave people a very bad feeling. It was as if the three of them were working together, but it was still somewhat strenuous to deal with it. Qin Susu's eyes suddenly flashed. She instantly attacked, thrusting her long sword towards the corpse puppet's neck. Chapter 1490. However, the instant the sword landed, it deviated slightly and did not hit the zombie. Instead, it completely infuriated it. The rotting zombie bellowed angrily, and several dozen long-necked zombie cranes descended from the sky and attacked the trio while flapping their wings. After Duan Siren and Bai Lishen chopped off the heads of two zombie cranes, they looked up and saw Qin Susu being kicked off the roof by a zombie and rolling all the way down. Roar! The zombie gathered all the zombie cranes and attacked the duo. Just as the dozen or so zombies were about to pounce on them, several whooshing sounds pierced through the air. The arrows flying over instantly shot into the zombie crane's head. The zombie roared angrily at the sky, but before it could leap forward, a purple flame landed on its body like a streak of light, roasting it into a chunk of charcoal that scattered on the ground. Duan Yu and Situ Yi flew to the roof in an instant and cleaned up the surrounding several dozen zombie cranes with a swing of their swords. Duan Siren gasped for breath and looked up at Duan Yu. She involuntarily called out with a wide grin, "Fourth brother." However, Duan Yu coldly swept her a glance and did not say anything. After exchanging a look with Situ Yi, the two of them flew down and landed on the steps in front of the main hall. When Empress Xiao and the others heard the sounds of rescue, they quickly opened the door and walked out one after another. The crown prince was dressed in a long black robe and had his hair bound by a jade crown, his back straight. With his back facing Empress Xiao and the others, he whispered to someone before waving his hand to have Yu Xiu lead a group of dragon saliva guards to investigate the situation. On the other side, the royal guard commander Hui Feng and his younger brother Hui Fan also led a group of people over and were cleaning up the remaining zombie cranes along the way. When Empress Xiao saw that her son had arrived, her eyes couldn't help but heat up, and she quickly walked down the steps. Mo Lien saw her mother running over when she turned around, so she went up to support her mother. "Royal mother, you must have been frightened." Empress Xiao quickly shook her head. "It's nothing. Quickly bring more people to look for our daughter-in-law. Our daughter-in-law asked us to stay in the main hall. She ran out alone and hasn't returned yet." Mo Lien was stunned. She turned around and frowned at Stay Up Late, who was running toward her. "What's going on?" "Your Highness, the Crown Prince Consort and this subordinate have arrived at the entrance of Yiting Court. Originally, this subordinate wanted to wait there to meet up with your Highness. Who knew that we would encounter an evolved corpse puppet with wings? During the fight, this subordinate was suddenly hit by an unknown mystic energy and fainted on the spot." Stay Up Late knelt down and blamed himself. "I'm useless. I couldn't protect the Crown Princess. Please punish me, your Highness." Mo Lien wasn't in the mood to punish him. She turned around and headed straight for the entrance of Yiting Court. His little Crown Princess had disappeared at the entrance of Yiting Court. That could only mean one thing: someone had kidnapped his Crown Princess during the chaos. He suddenly felt a little apprehensive. Could it be that this farce in Yiting Court was actually aimed at kidnapping her? "Follow him." Liang Qingqing hurriedly called out. A group of sect disciples with excellent combat strength followed the Crown Prince to the entrance of Yiting Court. However, when the Crown Prince and the others arrived at the place that Stay Up Late had pointed out where the little Crown Princess had disappeared, they saw a middle-aged man wearing a metal ghost mask leading a group of more than 3,000 men in black. They suddenly jumped in from outside the wall and attacked the group without a word. Chapter 1491. After exchanging a look with Duanyu, the Crown Prince abruptly turned and dashed toward the back of Yiting Court's garden. His speed was so fast that it was like a streak of light streaking across the horizon. The man in the Iron Demon mask was taken aback. Then, he waved his hand and led more than 3,000 subordinates in pursuit of the Crown Prince's group. Hall Master, beware of trickery. The masked Raksha princess couldn't resist giving a reminder. Northern Prince Mo only brought 1,000 dragon saliva guards and 2,000 royal guardsmen on this trip. The man in the Iron Demon mask snorted. How could those good-for-nothings be our match? Chase. As soon as he said the word chase, the group of black-clothed men who were rapidly dashing after him all increased their speed, gliding past like cold stars. Under the dusk of the night, the Crown Prince, Duanyu, Situ-I, and a group of about 100 sect disciples were seen dashing to the back of the garden. The Crown Prince suddenly stopped. Duanyu and the others also naturally stopped and turned to look at the group of black-clothed men who were rapidly chasing after them and surrounding them. Mo Lian's gaze swept up and down the black-clothed, iron-masked man's body before abruptly chuckling. You coward, why don't you tear off your veil and let everyone see your true appearance? The man in the Iron Demon mask cracked a smile, and his voice was a bit rough. Does your Highness the Crown Prince want to die knowing the truth? Unfortunately, you won't have this chance. Mo Lian chuckled. Haven't I told you before that overly proud people will die very quickly? With a wave of his hand, figures surged out from the surrounding trees and flowers. Under the leadership of Yu Xiu and Hui Feng, over 1,000 dragon saliva guards and imperial army guards swiftly surrounded these black-clothed men, forming 3 layers inside and 3 layers outside. As a result, the man in the Iron Demon mask and his group became sandwiched between enemies from both inside and outside. However, he smiled mockingly at Mo Lian. You think these little guardsmen from the lower star domain can take us down? TSK Duanyu couldn't resist shaking his head. I don't know if you were born arrogant or stupid. Can't you tell even now? This is a trap set up for you. You're dead for sure today. Heh, what's the point of talking nonsense with an idiot? Do it. Liang Qingqing shouted and suddenly pulled out a silk net as thin as a cicada's wing. At the same time, a transparent net also appeared in the hands of the 2 sect's disciples, including Duanyu, Situ-I, Bai Li Shi, and Wei Nanfeng. The 100 people worked together and leaped into the air. They tore apart the net in their hands. An inescapable net covered the sky and covered the earth as it flew towards the black-clothed men. Mo Lian also leapt into the air, shooting out hundreds and thousands of purple flames from her fingers. Once this flame fell on the inescapable net, it immediately emitted a purple smoke, which formed a fire net in an instant. The black-clothed men who were caught in it were so frightened that they jumped up and resisted. Right now, they were like turtles caught in a jar. There was a net of fire above their heads, and if they retreated, they would be annihilated by the well-trained guards led by Yu Xiu and Hui Feng. If they advanced, they would be even more miserable. If they encountered the 2 sects' disciples, they would either be roasted to death or shaken to death by the mystic energy. Mo Lian swiftly threw down a dozen purple lotuses, which abruptly exploded in the midst of the black-clothed crowd, causing the crowd of black-clothed people to suffer greatly. Chapter 1492. Strangely enough, no matter how the purple flames wildly scuttled and wantonly swept through the crowd, the inescapable net above them would not be destroyed. After a period of panic, the man in the Iron Demon mask hastily shouted, "Don't push and shove each other. Gather your strength and tear apart the fire net above us first." It could be said that his action was very wise, but unfortunately that web-like thing was actually very flexible. No matter how much firepower they gathered to blast open a corner, it was to no avail. The man in the Iron Demon mask couldn't help but feel terrified when he saw his black-clothed subordinates collapse one by one. There were already over 500 casualties. With a roar, everyone carried the fire net over their heads and quickly moved in the direction of the clear stream. However, his movement disrupted the formation instead, allowing Wuxia, Huifeng, and the other royal guards to quickly pounce on him and swiftly kill over 200 people. The Raksha princess blended into the crowd and didn't even dare to breathe loudly. She only felt that if this continued, their group would probably be wiped out by the crown prince and the others. "I'll leave it to you guys." Mo Lien was anxious to find his wifey, so how could he have the time to continue bickering with the man in the Iron Demon mask? Hence, he handed over command to Duan Yu and the others while he led a small group and swiftly left. When the man in the Iron Demon mask saw this, his lungs were about to explode from anger. Northern Prince Mo was completely disregarding his group. What did this mean? It meant that this lofty crown prince didn't treat them as opponents at all. "Kill!" The man in the Iron Demon mask roared angrily and waved his hand to instruct his subordinates to protect him as they continued retreating toward the clear stream. There was a bamboo forest at the other end of the clear stream, so he expected that the fire net above them would be affected by the bamboo forest's obstacles after entering. However, he was truly too naive. 5 minutes later, when he discovered that his group was still trapped in the bamboo forest, he couldn't help but panic. He had already lost over 1,000 subordinates along the way, and there were less than 2,000 black-clothed subordinates left. If this were to continue, wouldn't they be tortured in this Yiting court sooner or later? Duan Yu involuntarily snorted as he looked at the flustered demon-masked leader. "What? Do you think my all-encompassing net is a joke? Like I said, all of you will die here today. Summon your mystic beasts to defend." With the ghost-masked man's command, all the mystic cultivators above level 10 in the group started to summon their mystic beasts. However, great mystic cultivators were still rare in the end. Among the 2,000 people, only 200 or so people could summon their mystic beasts, and a portion of them were support-type mystic beasts that didn't have much combat ability. It was a bloody battle, almost a one-sided slaughter. This made the eyes of the man with the iron ghost mask bloodshot. He suddenly took out a shining white bead from his pocket. Not good. Level 15 Profound Energy Bead. Situi shouted loudly, reaching out his hand to block the crowd that was charging upwards. "Everyone, retreat. Die." The man in the iron mask viciously glared and abruptly injected all the mystic energy in his hand into that bead. After a huge boom, countless people were sent flying by the mystic energy bead's power and crashed to the ground with a thud. Chapter 1493. Waving away the thick smoke in front of him, Duan Yu gazed coldly at the giant sinkhole that had appeared in the center. Countless men in black had died in that sinkhole, and the ghost-masked man had already disappeared without a trace. In order to escape, he completely disregarded the lives of his subordinates. Duan Yu's lips curled as he sneered inwardly. He sighed and said, did he think he could escape? Cough cough. Wuxia covered his face with his sleeves and waved away the thick smoke in front of him. He ordered sternly, they can't have escaped far. 30 people in a team and eliminate all the enemies that have escaped to every corner of Yiting Court. Everyone responded in unison and formed well-trained teams. Duan Yu looked up at the overcast sky and said to Situi, let's go. We don't need too many people. Let's go meet that half-dead ghost-masked man. Liang Qingqing quickly followed. I also want to go and see what kind of person is pretending to be a ghost over there. He even dares to tame something as disgusting as a zombie, heh. In the outskirts of the Mo Kingdom capital. Inside a pitch-black old residence. The sky had completely darkened, and lightning flashed across the night sky. It looked like a heavy rainstorm was about to descend. Arbor didn't know how long she had been cooped up in this small room. She was so irritated that she kept kicking the defensive barrier in front of her. That damn Omega Katoku, why hadn't he died from mystic energy exhaustion after trapping her in this defensive barrier for such a long time? Creak. There was a light sound. The door was pushed open. Staring at the young sir who walked in, Arbor's eyes could practically shoot out flames. What are you doing? Sir Omega Katoku leaned to the side and had the servants bring in dinner, placing it on the short table in front of Arbor. After the door to the side room closed, there were only the two of them in the room, and the air instantly stilled. I said just now that I only want to have a good talk with you. On the other side, Mo Lien, who had led her men out of Yiting Court and was carefully searching along the lake, suddenly paused in her steps. She took out a green vine from her inner world and gripped it tightly. There was actually no reaction. Why? Logically speaking, as long as he didn't leave the vicinity of the Mo Kingdom capital, he only needed to hold on to Chiyochio's vine to connect with it and be brought into Jojo's paradise planet. This situation could only mean one thing. Jojo was currently under someone's control, and his spiritual awareness was most likely sealed. Even Jojo himself could not communicate with the sapling. When she thought of this, Mo Lien became even more anxious. Just as she was about to turn around and ask Duanyu for help, she saw Duanyu, Situ Yi, Liang Qingqing, Wei Nanfeng, and Bailey Shi swiftly leaping towards her. Jojo is really gone, Mo Lien said with a frown. Let's find that ghost-masked man first. I think Jojo's disappearance should be related to him, Duanyu said coldly. Situ Yi frowned and suggested another idea. Could it be? Someone took advantage of the ghost-masked man's attack to rob little junior sister while the ghost-masked man was leading his men. Mo Lien, you said that this organization that created zombies wanted to cause a great disaster in the Mo Kingdom capital, but why didn't they go to the downtown area to cause trouble instead of coming to such a desolate Lake Heart Island's Yiting Court? Wei Nanfeng shook his head and said, they couldn't have come for the little miss, right? Let's go. The more Mo Lien listened, the more apprehensive she felt. She didn't want to delay any longer. Taking out their communication jade tablet, the group identified their target and chased after Gale Forest after exiting the lake. Chapter 1494. The ghost-masked man didn't know that his whereabouts had already been exposed. With the Raksha princess's support, he stumbled all the way to Gale Forest. At this time, the people lying in ambush in Gale Forest all revealed themselves and took out the clothes they prepared beforehand for the ghost-masked man to change into. The Raksha princess's eyes flickered, and she cupped her hands in salute. We will go our separate ways. You guys enter the city, and I will return to the Raksha ghost sect first. After saying that, she swiftly left. A woman wearing a white veil involuntarily gnashed her teeth in resentment. This woman is extremely slippery when she encounters trouble. Forget it, let's enter the city first. The ghost-masked man changed into scholarly attire with a scholarly headscarf wrapped around his head. His ordinary face didn't have much expression. Just as the group exited the forest, they heard gusts of wind whistling through the air. The scholarly man's expression changed, and he hastily yelled, "Go!" Unfortunately, he hadn't even dashed out a few steps when Mo Lien, Duanyu, and the others rushed over and blocked his path. Your Excellency Simon Manor's High Priest, so you really are an old friend. Duanyu scoffed. He flicked the jade heavenly thunder in his hand and suddenly aimed it at the other party. He said with a smile, "It's best if you don't move. Were you the ones who captured the crown princess?" Mo Lien asked coldly. Confess honestly, and we will give you a quick death. Everyone, is there a misunderstanding? A faint smile appeared on the high priest's scholarly face. The crown prince's consort. Our Simon Manor is heading to the Mo Kingdom capital on this trip, so we haven't seen the crown princess. Stop pretending, alright? We followed you all the way here. Take out your ghost mask. Lian Qingqing folded her arms and smiled mockingly at the high priest. The high priest's frail face slowly turned gloomy. His face suddenly twitched and he laughed sinisterly. I really underestimated you bunch of juniors. Wei Nanfeng moved his fists and legs, and smiled at the high priest, so it's one of the famous 4 great villas, Ximing Villa's high priest. Now, can you tell us what organization you're working for? Huh? Tell me about it. Let's chat. The high priest snorted and involuntarily took 2 steps back. Do you think you can catch me? As soon as she finished speaking, Mo Lian's finger moved and a flame spirit whip shot towards the high priest. At the same time, Arbor stared expressionlessly at the Omega Kotoku through the transparent barrier. Are you born to be so cold? No, I remember that when I carried you out of that secret room, you looked at me with a very grateful gaze. At that time, you were not as cold and emotionless as you are now. Omega Kotoku propped up his chin with one hand and looked at the girl in front of him in a daze. He seemed to have a lot to say to her. That strange dream, let's call it a previous life for the time being. That continuous and strangely sorrowful dream made Omega Kotoku, who had walked through the course of his previous life, feel very uncomfortable. Jojo, tell me, was that dream real? You stayed by my side for a full 4 years. It was fake. Arbor glanced at him coldly and mocked, second young master, you aren't so stupid that you can't distinguish between dream and reality, right? Chapter 1495. No, I don't believe it. The experience in the dream was so real, how could it be fake? Qin Xian suddenly stretched out his hand and grabbed Arbor's wrist, asking with an agitated expression, Jojo, tell me, all of this is real, it's real. You're crazy. Arbor threw his hand away and coldly glared at him, it's all fake. What 4 years, what dream? I don't know anything about it. You're lying to me. Your eyes tell me that you're lying to me. You know. Qin Xian coldly stared at Xiao Mu's eyes, wanting to dig out some peculiar emotion from her emotionless and apathetic eyes. However, there was nothing at all. At the entrance of the Qin estate, when I first saw you, I had a very familiar feeling. And you, I remember, your reaction at that time completely showed that you knew me, right? Heh. Arbor sneered and turned his head to glance at him indifferently. He said in a very sarcastic tone, I took a few more glances at you because at that time, at the entrance of the Qin estate, a bunch of sick women were looking at you. I was just curious, don't think too much about other things. Liar. Qin Xian forced these 2 words out from between his teeth. He suddenly stretched out his hand and firmly grabbed her weak shoulder, shaking it hard, you're lying to me. You clearly remember me. Isn't it? Isn't it? You're crazy. Arbor kicked him hard. Only separated by the defensive barrier, this kick landed on the barrier. Hateful damned man. His hands could pass through the defensive barrier and grab her at any time, and any attack she kicked over was blocked by the defensive barrier. Hateful to the extreme. Let go. This nightmarish man could actually remember everything from her previous life. Was he joking with her? How could it be? She was reborn, but this man wasn't. How could he remember those painful memories from her previous life? How could he? Scram. Arbor ruthlessly kicked the defensive barrier again, his eyes spitting out flames of anger. Why was this person so annoying? What right did he have to act like they were close friends and not let go of her shoulder? Disgusting. Arbor used all his strength to push away the Omega Kotoku's hands. He tried to kick it, but it was bounced back by the defensive enchantment. She took a few steps back and sat down on the stool. Do you hate me that much? The second young master stared at her coldly, and a self-mocking smile appeared on his lips. But you, do you know how much I like you? When Arbor heard the word like, it was as if he had been stung by a poisonous snake. His whole body trembled and he subconsciously shrank back. She raised her head and stared at the second young master warily. Her eyes were filled with wariness and disdain. Get lost. Never say the word like to me. Don't fall in love with me, or else you won't be able to bear the consequences. Xiao Mu coldly glanced at him, as if hearing the word like from this person's mouth was inconceivable and unbelievable. Why? Why can't I say like? In my dream, you clearly looked at me with a like expression. Bullshit. Is it really good to think so highly of yourself? See you tomorrow. Chapter 1496. That was because in the beginning, it was him, it was this elegant and calm man who had pulled her out of hell. She was grateful for that. Back then, it was as if she was grabbing onto a fleeting light, holding onto him tightly, wanting to rely on this person. She thought that he was a good person. However, in the end, it was just a joke that brought disgrace upon herself. Arbor's eyes were cold and filled with coldness. When he looked at the person in front of him, there was no warmth at all. Such a gaze seemed to provoke this person, causing him to suddenly laugh. No. Really no. Arbor's pupils shrank, as if he was going to say something scary. She hurriedly interrupted him. Shut up. Why don't you let me continue? What are you afraid of? Heh. Arbor threw him a mocking look. I just don't want to listen to your nonsense. Jojo, in the dream, you clearly had feelings for me, Sir Omega Katoku said with certainty. Arbor looked at him sarcastically. You think too highly of yourself. In the dream? What dream? Everything in the dream, how can it be real? Arbor was too lazy to argue with him. This was no longer her previous life. She could only say that this person was too annoying if he insisted on harping on the past. Moreover, was there anyone who knew her feelings better than her? She had never liked him in her previous life. Rather than saying that she liked him, it was better to say that she had once seen him as her savior. Back then, she had been so desperate, and this person had suddenly descended upon her like a god, saving her from hell. However, the other party had only treated her as a little pet. If he liked her, he would touch her head. If he didn't like her, he would heartlessly starve her for 3 days and 3 nights. In order to tame this disobedient little pet of his, he could leave her there to fend for herself for many days. To let her be like a little worm, using her head to wander in the dark, so dirty and lowly that she almost couldn't believe it. That was her past. Such a cold-blooded and heartless man, just because of that so-called dream in her previous life, suddenly opened his mouth and said that he liked her. Ha! Don't you think you've blasphemed the word like? Liking someone meant treating them as a pet. Liking someone meant that they wanted to be their master. Liking someone meant that they could bully them, tame them, and make them obedient. Heh, this kind of liking, whoever wants it can take it. Arbor couldn't afford it. In her previous life, when this cold man starved her for a few days and nights and realized that he could not tame her, she did not know if something went wrong or if he suddenly had a conscience, but he suddenly changed his attitude towards her. What was the use of that? At that time, she had already been completely defeated by the loss of her dignity. At that time, she had already lost her heart. She had personally let go of the man she had once seen as her savior. She no longer had any feelings for him. Even if he treated her like a baby in the future, no matter how well he treated her, it would be useless. She didn't even want to hear, see, or ask anything about him. Even if she heard or saw anything, she would choose to forget about it. When they met in this life, she couldn't even remember his surname. In Arbor's eyes, this second young master in front of him was probably a little crazy. I didn't want you for a long time. Arbor's cold words were like a sharp arrow, ruthlessly piercing into the second young master's heart. Chapter 1497. She had abandoned him a long time ago. The Omega Kotoku's pupils constricted as he stared at the young lady in front of him with a strange gaze. He did not know why, but at this moment, he really wanted to reach out and grab her. No, he wanted to hug her. He wanted to hug this emotionless young lady tightly. No. Want. Let. Go. He just wanted to be willful and not let go of her for once. Bam! Seeing him reach out to grab her, Arbor kicked him away with all his might and dodged to the side. If he did not like her, then he did not like her. Why bother? Besides, it was useless to bother her. She should have thrown away these unhappy memories of the past, shouldn't she? Not a single one of these unimportant people would be able to touch his heartstrings. She could not be pulled into the abyss by this person in front of her again. She could not be confined to the nightmares of the past. She had to break free. She had to break free and be reborn in her state of mind. Otherwise, it would not be beneficial to her future path of cultivation. That's the right way to think. Kill him, kill this person in front of you, and you will be able to destroy your inner demon once and for all. The right path is right in front of you. A cold voice suddenly appeared in her conscious. It was chilly, like ice and snow pouring down from a high mountain. Under the falling peach blossoms, a tall red figure suddenly appeared beside her. It was so sudden that the Omega Kotoku could not help but be shocked. He looked at the venerable peach blossom immortal, who had suddenly appeared. Bam! However, in the next second, something even more shocking happened. The defensive boundary that was originally encircling Xiao Mu's body was actually shattered by the red-clothed man who had suddenly appeared with a powerful strike. A force of backlash swept over him, catching the Omega Kotoku off guard. He spat out a mouthful of blood. You are not from this star region. Qin Xian's eyes became extremely cold in an instant. She looked coldly at the man who had suddenly appeared to disturb her. Jojo, don't hesitate and be soft-hearted. Take this opportunity to kill your inner demon. The venerable peach blossom immortal raised his 5 fingers. Several thorns formed by the wood spirit suddenly shot out and flew over in a zigzag manner. Qin Xian was not surprised to see this. After all, it was not strange for an unknown expert who was not from Seikong planet to know how to use the power of the wood spirit. He quickly struck out a palm, and a thunder fire landed on the thorns. He had thought that this thunder fire would be able to block the thorns no matter what, but he was wrong. This red-clothed man who had appeared out of nowhere had a cultivation that was much higher than his own at this moment. The thorns directly passed of the thunder fire and wrapped around his 4 limbs and bound him tightly. With a tug, second young Master Qin was actually pulled into the air by the brambles, and he stared at that smiling red-clothed man with an extremely frosty gaze. Do you know what price you have to pay? This man had used the supreme saint power in the lower star region. Although it was only a little, it was enough to incur the wrath of the heavenly Tao. The venerable peach blossom immortal shrugged with a playful expression. He turned to look at the little girl who was clenching her fists tightly and not moving. Jojo, kill him quickly. What are you still hesitating for? The venerable peach blossom immortal came to her side in a flash. With a wave of his finger, more and more thorns wound around Qin Xian's body like twisting poisonous snakes. Now is the time to deal with your inner demons. Chapter 1498. Xiao Mu reflexively bit her small lips, her small face as white as snow. After hearing the venerable peach blossom immortal's words again, Arbor pulled open a transparent and shiny bowl made of ice crystals. That big bowl made of ice crystals spun in her fair little hand. In her other hand, a snow-white arrowhead gradually formed. She knocked it on the big bowl and aimed it straight at the Omega Kotoku's heart. You really want to kill me? The Omega Kotoku closed his eyes in pain. That's right. I owed you in my previous life. If you want me to pay you back in this life, I have no complaints. Xiao Qiao, in this world, only you can make me die willingly. Since you want me to die, then I will die. What am I afraid of? I am so fearless. Death will only bring me closer to you. Arbor's hand that was holding the bough trembled slightly. Suddenly, she heard the venerable Peach Blossom Immortal's indifferent voice. Jojo, don't hesitate. If you don't get rid of your inner demon, how will you grow in the future? Do it quickly. Show the greatest courage of your life. Yes. She wanted to kill him. She could not let him come into her life again. She could not let him become her inner demon. She could not let him have the chance to get close to her. Whether it was Qin Xin or Fan Qiuhe, the nightmares of her previous life would be cut off by her own hands. Farewell forever. The nightmare of my life, don't ever think of bothering me. You have no value in existing anymore. Arbor's eyes were replaced by a cold and resolute look. With a clang, the arrowhead pierced through the air and shot straight toward Qin Xin's heart. At that moment, her cold eyes fell on his smiling face. She stared at him with an incomparably cold gaze. She could not describe the feelings in her heart. Carefree? Yes. Release her anger? That seemed to be the case. Perhaps it was more of a release. It was an indescribable joy to be released from the nightmare of her previous life. She, Arbor, would never be disturbed by this nightmare again. It was time to walk out of it. Xiao Qiao. Qin Xin called out in a low voice. The last thing she saw was his scattered black hair, and that slightly miserable handsome face. Xiao Mu's eyes abruptly widened. Boom! He looked at the Omega Kotoku in front of him. Like a cluster of broken stars, he suddenly shattered into pieces in front of him. Arbor couldn't help but frown. There seemed to be something wrong with this fragmented scene. How could a perfectly fine person disintegrate into pieces like a broken soul? Before she could think further, a large, warm palm gently stroked her head. Good girl, you did well. In the future, when you are faced with even greater despair and difficulties, you can think about it. You are a person who can personally cut off your own inner demons. You. Fearless. Arbor turned his head to look at him. Suddenly, his expression changed slightly as he reached out and grabbed his sleeve. What's wrong with you? I'm leaving. The venerable Peach Blossom Immortal looked regretfully at the invisible chains on his limbs. He couldn't shake them off and couldn't help but roll his eyes at the sky. Alright, I'll go by myself. You don't have to use so many heavenly Tao chains to keep me hanging, okay? Where are you going? Arbor grabbed his sleeve tightly in panic. Hey, I'm going to a fun place. Don't worry. When you want to summon me again, I will appear. Chapter 1499. It's just that. The venerable Peach Blossom Immortal tilted his head in embarrassment and smiled. If I don't respond for a long time, it means that I haven't come out of that place. Where did you go? Arbor tugged at his sleeves, her eyes wide open. Is it dangerous? Is it like what Qin Xin said, that you used a special ability to be targeted by the heavenly axiom? You're hiding in our Paradise Planet. That's right. If I hide in Paradise Planet, will the heavenly axiom still be able to find me? After the venerable Peach Blossom Immortal said this, the dozens of heavenly axiom locks on his body suddenly increased to 50 to 60. They dragged him out of the courtyard. Damn, heavenly axiom, do you have to be so cruel? It's not like I don't want to go. Let me drink some good wine. How many years has it been since I last ate meat and drank wine? What joy was there in cultivating in that vast expanse of whiteness every day? I might as well not. Damn! Suddenly, the heavenly axiom locks on his back, hands, and legs increased to a few hundred. He dragged the venerable Peach Blossom Immortal out of the door. Hence, Xiao Mu hugged his arm tightly. She felt like her body had been stabbed by countless blades, and it was so painful that she wanted to die. The Venerable Peach Blossom Immortal's expression changed slightly. He tried to pull his arm out of her hands. "Little girl, let go. Little girl, do you think you can stop the heavenly axiom? Let go." "I won't." How could she watch a person who had helped her multiple times be dragged to some unknown place by the heavenly axiom? "Silly girl, what can happen to me?" The Venerable Peach Blossom Immortal, who was being pulled back by the heavenly axiom locks, looked down at her helplessly. "I'm really fine. Isn't it just a trip to the punishment realm? I used to go there often too." "Big liar. What punishment realm? It didn't sound like a good place." The Venerable Peach Blossom Immortal, who had successfully become a big liar, stretched out his hands helplessly. However, his hands were bound by the heavenly axiom locks and he couldn't move at all. He couldn't even pat her head to comfort her. With a slightly regretful gaze, the Venerable Peach Blossom Immortal said, "I'm not a big liar. My name is Wuxia. Remember it. Also, the cultivation level of your inner demon's main body is actually about the same as mine. You have to be careful when you go to the upper 3 continents." Peach Blossom. The little fellow pounced with all its might and caught hold of a section of his sleeve. The corner of the Venerable Peach Blossom Immortal's mouth twitched helplessly. "I already said that you're not called Peach Blossom. You're called Wuxia. This child is really thoughtless. Why is he so worrisome?" In the next second, an open black door suddenly appeared behind the Celestial Venerable. The passage was so deep that one couldn't see the end of it. Arbor only glanced at it for a moment before he felt the world spinning around him. He was sent flying by a huge force. "Heavenly Tao. Why did you throw her? I'm not done with you." The Venerable Peach Blossom Immortal shouted angrily. The moment the black door slammed shut, he and his voice disappeared without a trace. Rotten Peach Blossom. Arbor was about to lunge forward when he suddenly hit a thick wall. She looked up and saw that the great ape had suddenly appeared in front of her. Her head hit the great ape's fat belly. Her head hurt so much that tears welled up in her eyes. Chapter 1500. Rotten Peach Blossom was dragged to some unknown place. What should she do? She panicked for no reason. When she suddenly heard the words, "Punishment Realm," she felt an inexplicable sense of familiarity. It was as if she had heard someone mention it before. Cho-Cho. Cho-Cho, who was trying hard to play dead, did not make a sound for a long time. Cho-Cho. "Master." The little Traiant Dodo hopped out from Paradise Planet and climbed up her left shoulder in a flash. The 2 little tree branches matched each other, and it lowered one of its branches and said, "Master, you tell me what you want to tell me. Cho-Cho will definitely tell you everything I know. That punishment realm that Rotten Peach Blossom talked about, is it really not dangerous?" That's heavenly Tao, in order to punish, What are you, about? Tell me quickly." He sounded like he was trying to think of a way to trick her into going over while talking. What kind of situation was it, and it still wanted to hide it from her? It was simply preposterous. The little Traiant raised its little head pitifully and did not dare to continue hiding from its little master who was about to go berserk. It hurriedly said, It's like this, Master. That's because powerhouses above the deity realm are all very powerful, and even Heavenly Tao cannot kill them wantonly. Therefore, Heavenly Tao specially set up a 17-story tower of punishment. Cough, it's just to suck in disobedient powerhouses above the deity realm like the Venerable Peach Blossom Immortal and train them. Actually, it's not that dangerous. It's just a little troublesome. Arbor turned and glared at the little tree. Before this, the Venerable Immortal had always stayed in our Paradise Planet, and Heavenly Tao could not do anything to him. Therefore, when the venerable immortal used his holy power this time, the heavenly Tao could not tolerate it anymore. That's why he was dragged to the punishment realm. Little master, you can just imagine that punishment realm as. You don't even need to imagine it. It's just a 17-story tower. As long as the venerable immortal passes this 17-story tower, he can come out. What if he can't pass it? Arbor stared at Chiuchiu with a pair of round eyes and asked. If he can't pass it, he'll be locked up for 180 years, the little tree muttered to itself. What? Arbor's eyes widened. Don't be nervous, little master. Don't worry. This was definitely not the first time he had entered the celestial realm. Look at him just now. Indifferent, right? That cool and unrestrained, right? You clearly don't look scared at all. Little tree continued, just think of the Tower of Punishments as a place for cultivation. Actually, it's pretty good. It can help people improve their cultivation quickly, right? What about Emolien? Your Highness, you don't have to worry at all. After going in, they would definitely be able to come out. At most, we'll spend 100 years in there. How can the heavenly Tao not let us go? The sapling Chiuchiu blurted out before realizing what it had just said. She immediately widened her beady eyes and looked at her young master's almond-shaped eyes. She hurriedly used the branch to slap her own mouth. 100 years? Darling Qiao's voice trembled, and her eyes turned red. She looked like she was about to cry. Chiuchiu, who was tricked into telling the truth by her young master, immediately slapped her own mouth again and grumbled, Nonsense, nonsense. Master, don't worry. Nothing will happen to His Highness the Crown Prince. Chapter 1501. At the same time. Divine Province's Qin estate, inside a beehive-like cultivation room against a mountain. A handsome youth drenched in sweat abruptly opened his eyes and spat out a mouthful of blood. Xin, who destroyed your clone? A calm voice that contained a hint of anger suddenly rang out in his small cultivation room. I don't know. Preposterous. Wait until father sends someone to Seacone Planet to investigate. No, don't go. Cough, cough. Father, there are currently many powerful enemies entrenched on Seacone Planet. We'd better not send anyone there and make unnecessary sacrifices. What you say makes some sense. After all, even your clone that has already materialized is no match for the powerful enemies on Seacone Planet. It can be seen that sending someone else there will be of no help. However, this matter cannot be settled so easily. Whoever destroyed your clone will naturally leave behind some aura. As long as they set foot on the Divine Province's soil, Father will be able to sense it and avenge you. Qin Xian shook his head with a wry smile. After sensing a wisp of his father's divine sense withdraw from his cultivation room, he once again coughed out 2 mouthfuls of blood. He clenched his fists tightly. You want to kill me so badly. He smiled rather bitterly, his lips curling into a faint curve. You might not know yet, but we will meet again. Outside Gale Forest. Siming Manor's high priest and eldest heavenly daughter were subdued by a net of fire. They struggled with all their might, glaring fiercely at Emolien. Prince Mo. You probably don't know. As long as this old man dies. All of the corpse puppet armies lying in ambush outside the Mo Kingdom capital will launch an all-out attack on Guanlan City. You simply won't be able to avoid it. Where did you take my crown princess to? Emolien stared coldly at the high priest. Ha ha ha. The eldest heavenly daughter suddenly looked up at the sky and cackled. Which one has the leisure to look at your crown princess? Prince Mo, your question is rather interesting. Pa. After slapping herself across the air, the eldest heavenly lady glared ferociously at Emolien, who had attacked her. The entire northern Mo will be drowned by our corpse puppet army. This is your destiny. Anyone who goes against us will not have a good ending. This was called those who obey the heavens prosper, and those who defy the heavens perish. Anyone who does not conform to the will of the heavens will be devoured by the will of the heavens. Heavenly fortune. Everyone was extremely sensitive, and they all caught these two words that were different from usual. This heavenly girl had emphasized the word heavenly luck several times. Oh, so that underground organization of yours is called Tian Yun. Wei Nanfeng couldn't hide the shock in his heart, but on the surface, he had a carefree smile. Crossing his hands, he asked with a sloppy look, "Aren't you guys used to digging holes underground and living like rats?" "Don't worry, when we received Prince Mo's letter a few days ago, we started searching the entire kingdom for your rat's nest." "That's right, there will be a day when we can wipe out your rat's nest in one fell swoop." Liang Qingqing sneered, pointing her sword straight at the high priest. "Your Excellency High Priest. Why aren't you confessing honestly?" "Oh no, this person took poison." Duan Yu flashed over and grabbed the high priest's jaw, forcing him to open his mouth. In the blink of an eye, the high priest's eyes abruptly turned bloodshot. End of midnight. Chapter 1502. Mo Lien was slightly alarmed, and a streak of fire shot over. "Quickly move aside." In the blink of an eye, this streak of fire struck the high priest's gaping mouth. The high priest failed to bite down on Duan Yu's arm and staggered back 2 steps after being hit by the streak of fire. Duan Yu seized the opportunity to ruthlessly kick the high priest in the stomach, sending him flying far away before crashing to the ground with a bang. Disgusting thing. Liang Qingqing's mystic energy surged, transforming into a palm-sized giant hand that suddenly landed on the high priest's head. Exclamation point. A muffled sound rang out. The high priest howled in pain from the beating, and his small blood-red eyes flickered with a ruthless glint. "Don't waste words with him, this thing mutated." Situ Yi, Wei Nanfeng, and the others quickly attacked, bombarding the high priest's head with mystic energy as if it was free. In a flash, this person's head was blasted to the ground, completely lifeless. Seeing the high priest being surrounded and beaten to death by a group of youngsters without any explanation, Eldest Heavenly Lady, who had been maintaining her graceful posture under the white cloth, suddenly panicked. Eldest Heavenly Lady hastily ordered the Siming Manor's disciples to block her and protect her. Meanwhile, she shrunk behind the crowd, looking like she wanted to find a chance to escape. However, how could Mo Lien's group be willing to let her leave like this? Bailey Shi and Wei Nanfeng Pincer attacked from the front and back. Their long swords imbued with mystic energy released 2 streaks of light, respectively stabbing the legs of the fleeing Eldest Heavenly Lady. Eldest Heavenly Lady shrieked as she toppled to the ground with a plop. When she turned around, she saw that Liang Qingqing and the others had already dealt with most of the Siming Manor's minions. This terrifying martial strength. Eldest Heavenly Lady's pupils contracted, and she instantly felt that a calamity was looming over her head. The group closed in on Eldest Heavenly Lady and trapped her in a small encirclement, making her inwardly resentful but unable to escape. Don't act recklessly. What the sacrificial Heavenly Master had said before was all true. If I'm also killed by you, then those zombies will definitely sweep through the Mo Kingdom capital and launch an attack. None of you can think of escaping. Ah! Before she could finish her words, Mo Lien's raven moon pierced through her shoulder. You talk too much. Prince Mo coldly glanced at the woman and pulled out his sword from her shoulder. This is not what I want to hear. Eldest Heavenly Fairy immediately became listless. What do you want to hear, Your Highness the Crown Prince? We really didn't kidnap the Crown Princess. Situ Yi was silent for a few seconds before suddenly saying, previously, Siming Manor's High Priest announced that they were searching for phoenix eggs in the Mystic Beast Forest. Was it to attract everyone to the Mystic Beast Forest? You did it on purpose. Am I right? Didn't you guess it already? Why do you still have to ask? The great heavenly maiden said while trembling. Why? Situ-E was determined to get to the bottom of this as he coldly stared at eldest heavenly maiden. Speak. The high priest wanted to lure the 8 great patrician families and sect disciples to the mystic beast forest. His original intention was to release a group of zombie rats to infect you and then control you one by one. BB cultivators' bodies are different from normal people's. Especially mystic cultivators. His Excellency the High Priest wanted to know if mystic cultivators could also undergo a certain degree of mutation after using medicine. Chapter 1503. What exactly do you want to do, Heavenly Fate? The essence of your research on this mutated poison is to accelerate the evolution of normal people. Mo Lien snorted. Isn't that so? In the beginning, this mutated poison only caused new corpses to mutate. Then, you weren't satisfied with mutating a bunch of corpses. Instead, you directly experimented on living people. Mo Lien coldly looked at Big Heavenly Maiden and said, your research on the poison was very successful. You successfully wiped out a batch of weak normal people. You allowed some people to gain strength while the others turned into ugly zombies. The most tragic ones were those normal people who didn't change at all. Because such people have no value in existing and will become food in the stomachs of zombies. Isn't that the case, Siming Manor's Big Heavenly Maiden? Duan Yu added as he turned to ask with a grin. Since you already know everything. Then what else do you want to ask? Big Heavenly Maiden suddenly shouted agitatedly, a dark light flashing through her eyes. I was originally just a normal person, but the mutated poison you speak of allowed me to gain a powerful speed ability. Ah! Big Heavenly Maiden's chest was abruptly pierced by a mystic energy, and she fell heavily to the ground. What a pity! A speed ability user like you still can't withstand a mystic cultivator's attack. Duan Yu smiled as he lowered his raised hand and glanced at her without a trace of sympathy. Do you want to create a fair world where there are no normal people and only special ability users, mystic cultivators, and body cultivators? But do you know? In reality, this world is inherently unfair. Some people's talents are beyond your reach and beyond your reach. Duan Yu said with a sneer. Big Heavenly Maiden's body involuntarily stiffened as she trembled at their threatening and scorching gazes. She suddenly screamed with all her might, long live the Heavenly Fate! Long live the Heavenly Fate! The fire of Heavenly Fate will not perish. Where there is Heavenly Fate, there will be hope. Heavenly Fate! Heavenly Fate! Heavenly Fate! Mo Lien's sword flew up and instantly sent her head flying. She then turned around and said to everyone, Duan Yu, take them back and deploy them according to the original plan. Prepare for battle. I'll go check on Jojo first. You received news from her? Yes. Mo Lien nodded. Qiuqiu had informed him of Jojo's location just now, so he had to hurry over and meet up with Jojo as soon as possible. All right. Duan Yu nodded and didn't say anything else. He ordered people to clean up the high priest's and eldest heavenly lady's corpses before immediately returning to the city. Mo Lien naturally followed Qiuqiu's directions and hurried to an old residence in the suburbs. Within the capital, he could indeed ask Sapling to bring him into Paradise Planet. However, no matter where he went in, he would still come out from the same place. It was impossible for him to teleport to Jojo's side in an instant. Hence, he still summoned Little Seven to give him a ride so that he could speed up. The little Trent's tone was clearly a bit dejected. He didn't know what happened to Jojo that he didn't even use the messenger talisman to inform him that he was safe. When Mo Lien rushed to the old residence, he saw the little fellow at the entrance as soon as he landed. This little thing was currently curled up into a ball and hugging her knees as she sat on a stone block at the entrance. Chapter 1504. She drooped her little head, looking especially dejected. Prince Mo's heart shrank slightly. He hurriedly walked forward and scooped the little thing up from the stone block, hugging her in his arms. "What's wrong?" When the little fellow raised her head, he could clearly see that the little thing's eyes were moist. It was obvious that she was about to cry. Prince Mo immediately panicked. He hurriedly hugged her and asked softly, "Jojo, what's wrong? Who bullied our Jojo? Tell me quickly. I'll beat him up for you. You guys." Arbor tightly pursed her little mouth, trying her best to hold back the moist tears in her eyes. "Don't cry, don't cry. Only weaklings cry so easily." She was someone who strived to become strong, someone who wanted to embark on the path of becoming strong. How could she be defeated by a little setback? Us. Mo Lien stealthily swept a glance at the little tray ant, who was hiding behind the stone block. The cold light in her eyes hit the little tray ant in the face. It was so cold that the little tray ant shook its little body and sneakily hid in the crevices of the stone blocks. It hated that it couldn't hide its entire body. Woo-woo, it was his fault for being nosy and saying the wrong thing. Arbor suddenly stretched out a pair of small arms and firmly wrapped them around Mo Lien's neck. She rubbed her head against his neck and cried out pitifully, "I'll go with you, go with you." "Where are we going?" Mo Lien really couldn't understand what the little fellow was shouting about. "Let's go to the Tower of Punishment together." When the 4 words Tower of Punishment were said, Mo Lien's cold eyes seemed to be covered with a layer of cold fog. She suddenly looked at the little tray ant, who was hiding in the crevices of the stone blocks. Other than him, who else would mention the Tower of Punishment in front of the little fellow? "I'll go with you to that 17-story bullshit tower. Let's go and bring the rotten peach blossom back." Arbor moved around his neck, and a small head moved back and forth on the side of his head. Mo Lien's heart was almost melted by her adorable actions. He reached out and picked her up by the waist, and simply carried her to sit on the stone block. "You can't go, Jojo." "Why?" Arbor's eyes widened, and then he drooped his small head and said softly, "I know, I'm too weak." "No. How can my Jojo be too weak?" Mo Lien hugged her and shook her little body. He lifted her head and said, "Jojo, Jojo, Jojo. You're still young, you can't go to that place. Give me half a year." "No. 5 months. I promise you, I will definitely come to Shantian Prefecture to look for you, okay?" Arbor shook her small head like a rattledrum, and her hands firmly grasped his lapels. This person, this hateful man. In the past, when he stuck by her side all day long, she didn't feel anything. But now, when she knew that he was going to leave her, her heart was inexplicably flustered. Big liar. Arbor looked at him pitifully and shouted, "Chocho said that you will be imprisoned in the Tower of Punishment for 100 years before you can come out. Just like rotten peach blossoms. Rotten peach blossoms can't come out. You can't come out either. You can't come out. Chocho." Mo Lien shouted angrily. Chocho immediately stretched out 2 branches to cover his non-existent ears. Woo-woo. Chocho was wrong, Chocho's mouth was cheap, Chocho didn't dare to speak nonsense anymore. Chapter 1505. How could that be? Don't listen to Chocho's nonsense. He's just a deceitful tree, what would he know? He's just a guy who doesn't know how to watch his mouth. Mo Lien hurriedly hugged his little wife and comforted her, "I swear, within 5 months, I'll definitely come to Shantian Prefecture to see you. Jojo, my Jojo, how could I bear to leave you behind?" However, this small separation was for a longer reunion in the future. He had already thought it through. Wasn't it just going to challenge the Tower of Punishment? He had nothing to fear. In addition, his seal was about to be opened in a few days. When that time came, his divine realm aura would leak out and he wouldn't be able to hide it from the heavenly Tao. Rather than being dragged away by the heavenly Tao like a rotten peach blossom, he might as well go himself. He'd just make a trip to the realm of punishment. What could the heavenly Tao do to him? As long as he made it through, the heavenly Tao wouldn't be able to find trouble with him in the future. What if I can't make it through? Arbor hooked her two little claws around his neck and looked at him with an uncertain expression. How can you not make it through? Don't you know who your husband is? Mo Lien reached out and pinched her little nose playfully. Isn't it just a 17-story tower? Can't I make it through in 5 months? Besides, don't I have a rotten peach blossom to help me? Arbor thought that was true. In any case, Mo Lien went there and he had a rotten peach blossom to help him. But how could the little fellow know that Prince Mo was just coaxing her? Because in the 17-story Tower of Punishment, everyone who entered the tower would be separated and no one would be able to meet each other. Without anyone to help, if you made it through, the heavenly Tao would let you scram. If you didn't make it through, you would be locked up for 80 to 100 years. This was no different from going to jail. Who told you to break the rules? Who told you to be crazy? You're a divine realm expert and you just had to sneak into a lower realm to make your presence known. Don't you know that great gods like you can destroy a star region with a flick of your finger? How could the heavenly Tao allow such an existence to stay in a lower star region? Don't joke around. Will the phoenix egg and little white snake be dragged away too? No, the phoenix egg has a contract with you, so it conforms to the laws of the heavenly Tao. As for little white snake. Let's not let him show himself. Arbor wrinkled his little nose. I was thinking of forming an army of summoned beasts. Such a thing can never be achieved, right? The heavenly Tao was so lenient that he had to take care of everything that happened. How could he watch her form an army of summoned beasts and run amok in the world? That might not be the case. Mo Lien saw that she was in a bad mood and could only coax her carefully. Jojo, be good. Maybe the heavenly axiom is in a good mood and won't care how many summons you have. Liar. Arbor looked unhappy. After summoning the little white snake, I reached my summoning limit again. Now I can't summon anything. Chirp. Mo Lien couldn't help but plant a kiss on her soft little face. Don't worry. You'll definitely be able to summon more in a while. You'll really come and see me in 5 months. The little fellow raised her little head and looked at him seriously. You're not lying to me. I'm not lying. Liar. Rotten peach blossoms are also lying to me. How could that be? Mo Lien rubbed his face against hers. Rotten peach blossoms are rotten peach blossoms. I am me. Of course I won't lie to you. Are you sure? The little fellow asked again, unsure. Chapter 1506. Mo Lien lifted her small chin and solemnly nibbled on her lips. He chuckled softly and said, I really won't lie. Jojo, we've known each other for so many years, but have you ever seen me lie to you? Of course, I won't lie to you. His cheek gently rubbed against the side of her face. Jojo, even if I lie to everyone in the world, I won't lie to you. Arbor's heart settled a little. She understood Mo Lien quite well. As long as it was something he promised, he would most likely perfectly resolve it within the time limit. So if he said 5 months, it would probably be less than 5 months. The 100-year prison sentence the sapling Chiochio mentioned was most likely to scare her. Where was Little Tree? Little Tree. She was going to kill him later. Okay, I believe you. Arbor nodded and said, 5 months, at the latest 5 months. You must come and find me. You're not allowed to be late, or else I'll ignore you. Okay. Mo Lien hugged this willful little fellow and nodded in agreement. Wait. Since when do we start counting? Mo Lien was taken aback, then he said exasperatedly, I haven't left yet. Of course, it starts counting from the day we parted. Arbor puffed up her small cheeks and peeked at him with her large, watery eyes. It's not today. Mo Lien thought he was originally feeling a little sad, but why did he suddenly feel like laughing? His little stoic baby was seriously so comical. Mo Lien hugged her lovingly the entire way and said softly, let's return to the Eastern Palace. I still have something to tell you. On the way, Mo Lien told Arbor in detail about the High Priest at Siming Manor. No wonder the High Priest was willing to announce such an important piece of news like the Phoenix Egg to the public. So it was because of this idea. Arbor shook his head. It seems that those people from Heavenly Fate are no longer satisfied with the status quo. They want to extend their evil claws to mystic cultivators and body cultivators. Their experiments need to be improved. It's just a pity that there are too few mystic cultivators and body cultivators available in their organization, so they've set their sights on the 8 great patrician families in some sections. Mo Lien also nodded in full agreement to this. I also think so. Unfortunately, they underestimated your abilities. The entire underground base of the Mystic Beast Forest was swept clean by you in one fell swoop. Mo Lien curled his lips as he joyfully nuzzled Xiao Mu's petite body. Xiao, do you worship hubby a lot? Arbor nodded and praised, you are really the smartest person I've ever met. As he said this, he pursed his lips as if he thought of something. It's just a pity that High Priest and the Great Holy Lady are already dead, so we can't obtain any useful information. Mo Lien gave a before saying with a chuckle, that's not necessarily the case. Duan Yu will definitely search their souls. Although they're already dead and the soul searching might not be effective, it's still better than nothing. The two returned to the Eastern Palace and wanted to rest for a bit, but who would have expected that the zombie army outside would be so impatient? Before it was deep into the night, the noisy group of zombies had already started attacking the Mo Kingdom capital. There was a small discrepancy between this time and the time Mo Lien calculated. It was early by more than 2 hours. However, it didn't matter much since their group had already made preparations. Chapter 1507. Speaking of which, it was strange that the zombies attacking the Mo Kingdom capital this time were like a well-trained army, advancing layer by layer towards the city walls like an ocean wave. At first, they only advanced on a small scale, but when they neared the northern city walls, a large number of zombies swiftly advanced towards the city walls, accompanied by waves of roars. It was as if there was some core in the zombie army directing them on how to attack and fight. However, for Mo Lien and the others, who had experienced Bailon City's crisis, they had already developed a set of very effective countermeasures to deal with the zombies attacking the city. Arbor stood on the city gate tower as he watched the soldiers push the large catapults up the city gate tower. He only glanced at them briefly. This catapult had been modified, and there was even a groove for storing kerosene at the end. When the fire started burning, the soldiers on the side worked together to lift up a huge rock and throw it into the catapult. Arbor only saw that huge rock instantly caught in the raging fire and rolled all the way through the groove. It abruptly flew several dozen meters into the air and was sent flying out of the city walls with a bang, crashing into the zombie horde outside the city. This way, they could conserve a large amount of manpower such as mystic cultivators and body cultivators. With the help of this kind of catapult, ordinary soldiers could also enter the battlefield to fight against the zombie army as long as they hid behind the large catapults. More than 20 catapults were pushed up the city gate tower. However, these big guys were very cumbersome, and ordinary soldiers needed more than 10 people to push them up. This required a certain amount of time for mystic cultivators to attack from afar to fill in the gaps. Prince Mo and Duan Yu's group were currently standing on the edge of the city wall, coldly watching the zombie army that blotted out the sky and covered the earth below. There were probably several tens of thousands of them. Compared to the siege of Bailon City, there were only a few more. We still underestimated them. Duan Yu muttered to himself. Where exactly did these things pop out from? Wei Nanfeng couldn't help but mutter. If the lips were gone, the teeth would be cold. If the human territory really was captured by the zombies, then the entire Seikong planet wouldn't be far from falling. After all, the Mo Kingdom capital was the largest defensive fortification in the north. If even the Mo Kingdom capital couldn't resist this wave of zombies, then the problem was already very serious. Other smaller places were even more unlikely to resist. Logically speaking, that shouldn't be possible. With so many undead puppets appearing out of nowhere, there has to be a place to contain them. It's impossible to appear out of thin air, right? Liang Qingqing said. There should be a large invisible underground village nearby. It should be under the Gale Forest. Mo Lien pursed her lips and said coldly. Bailey she couldn't help but frown when he heard this. If even you guys can't immediately find out where the rat nests are, how are we going to clean up the rat nests hidden deep underground when we return? That's right. In this way, wouldn't the initiative be in their hands, and they can invade our country whenever they want? Wei Nanfeng couldn't help but say. At the side, Wei Nanshu's face had already turned pale. He hid behind Wei Nanfeng and shouted, third brother, what should we do now? We're surrounded by zombies. If he had known earlier, he wouldn't have come to Northern Mo to join in the fun. So scary. How could they resist so many zombies? Shut up. Wei Nanfeng coldly swept a glance at this good-for-nothing thing. This coward, his reputation as the third elder brother had been completely lost by this guy. Chapter 1508. Roar roar. Waves of roars came from the distance. These terrifying sounds ripped apart the tranquility of the Mo Kingdom capital, causing all the commoners staying at home to become uneasy and tense. Currently, the streets outside were completely under martial law, and the commoners were all chased back home and prohibited from coming out. But this didn't mean that they didn't know what was happening. The fear of the unknown made people afraid, especially when the roars that came from time to time were neither human nor beast, causing people to feel even more terrified. Look! Xiaomi pointed at that batch of zombies below the city gate tower. Among these zombies that were bravely attacking the city, a portion of them seemed to be very intelligent as they followed those roars and walked towards the periphery of the city wall. They aren't thinking of circling around to the south gate, west gate, or east gate, right? Xiaomi asked in shock. Could it be that the zombies also had brains to think and knew how to change directions to attack the city? These things are starting to truly mature. Bailey, she said with a frown, perhaps one day, they will evolve to the point where they are no different from us humans. Xiaomi instantly felt as if she had eaten a fly, feeling uncomfortable all over. It can't be. You all feel that these zombies can still think and have intelligence like us humans in the future. Everyone looked at her with a strange gaze. Does intelligence, Princess Me, this thing exist? Xiaomi glanced at them in astonishment before lightly poking Arbor's waist with her small hand. Jojo, just now, they looked at me with a strange gaze. What did they mean? They said that you don't have intelligence. Arbor translated their gaze for her and then added, they feel that you might not be any smarter than zombies. Everyone, Me. Fuck. Xiaomi looked disdainfully at Bailey Shi, Wei Nanfeng, and the others. How is sister not intelligent? How is sister not smarter than zombies? Cough. Wei Nanfeng hurriedly turned his head away, pretending to discuss countermeasures with Bailey Shi, Situ Yi, and the others. They directly blocked out Princess Xiaomi's noisy cries. You said that they... Aren't they very overboard? Ah. Xiaomi twisted her neck. She originally wanted to kick them, but Gong Sunlight blocked her with one hand. Princess, can we not court death? That's too much. Arbor nodded. When Xiaomi heard this, she immediately grinned and stepped forward to hold Arbor's arm. I knew you were the best. Your Highness, second young Master Do and a group of people from the Celestial Medicine Valley have arrived. Mo Lien indifferently glanced at Huifeng, who had come to report the situation, and indifferently nodded. Invite them up. At the crucial moment, the Do family's second young master and those people from the Celestial Medicine Valley could be considered reliable. Accompanying second young Master Do were eldest young Master Do Fengnian, Celestial Medicine Valley's Wenren Ningjing, Kong Rumio, and other physicians. As soon as they came up to the city gate tower, they hurriedly bowed to the crown prince before busily distributing mystic energy replenishing medicines to the mystic cultivators. They received a lot of favorability from the mystic cultivators. Arbor glanced at Wenren Ningjing and the others. They had fought together several times and could be considered old acquaintances. Your Highness, Dojo Master Ho Ping of Juxian Martial Arts Dojo has brought a dozen mystic cultivators and more than 20 body cultivators to help. Your Highness, the people from the Duan clan have arrived. Your Highness, the people from the Talisman Patrician family have also arrived. Your Highness, the Wu family and the Hong family have brought people over. At this very moment, their wills were as strong as an impregnable fortress. Chapter 1509. Everyone was well aware that if the Mo Kingdom base fell, the entire Seikong planet would inevitably collapse along with it. In the face of the greater good, all disputes and struggles could be temporarily set aside. Right now, they were faced with a major problem that concerned the survival of all humans on Seikong planet. At this very moment, Mo Lien had mobilized all of the capital's reserve forces, tens of thousands of mystic cultivators, tens of thousands of body cultivators, and hundreds of thousands of soldiers guarding the city, and were converging in batches from all directions. She had mobilized troops and dispatched generals in practically half a day. This kind of power was both shocking and apprehensive. The restless Eastern Kingdom's third crown prince, Ing Fa, immediately shut his mouth. He didn't know how to describe his current feelings. He felt that when he returned, he would sternly warn his foolish and muddle-headed father, don't ever try to come out of the small island. It wasn't without reason that Northern Moi had beaten them into an isolated island. Northern Moi was so powerful that even countries like Northern Wei and Southern Bailey had always been on good terms with it and never dared to offend it, let alone their tiny place. It was pretty good for the Eastern Kingdom to stay on the small island. At least, their home country was still there. If they rashly came out of the island and wanted to counterattack the Mo Kingdom, then they might be swallowed whole within minutes without leaving a trace of their bones. Reorganize all the mystic cultivators. Go up the city gate tower in groups of 500, and rotate every hour. The rest of the people are to wait for orders and rest. Recover as soon as possible. Mo Lien gave her first order. Huifeng immediately led his men down to do the job. Everyone, pay attention. Don't let the zombie army below move to the east and west gates. Just guard this place. This kind of once-and-for-all solution was much more comfortable than running around the east and west gates. They only needed to keep a close eye on the north gate. Were the zombies trying to disperse their forces? That would depend on whether Prince Mo cooperated or not. Something's flying over from the sky. Archers, pay attention. Prepare to fire. Mo Lien reached out and swiped, forming the image of a fiery red bow and arrow in the air. Blazing fiery red flames tightly enveloped the bow. A shadowy arrow of fire was knocked on the large bow. Everyone only saw him squint his eyes and aim his bow and arrow at the sky. When a large group of cadaveric cranes and cadaveric crows flew over, the leader was actually a human-shaped cadaveric hag with wings that were more than a meter wide. This was a zombie that had completely evolved to the intermediate level. The wings on its back were no longer deformed and unable to fly. This zombie seemed to have evolved quite well. Swoosh! The arrow of fire flew through the air, heading straight for the wings of the flying corpse puppet. Everyone saw it clearly. The arrow pierced through the zombie's left wing and hit its right wing, skewering it like a piece of barbecued meat. Although the corpse puppet could not feel anything, with its wings skewered, it could not continue flying. Its entire body fell to the battlefield below, rolling on the ground. The arrow stuck in its wings made it unable to break free for a moment. Boom! It smashed into the sand, creating a 10-meter-long and several-meter-deep crater. Its fall caused the tens of thousands of corpse crows and corpse cranes behind the corpse puppet to lose their leader and fall into chaos. Fire! A sharp glint flashed in Commander Huey's eyes, and he suddenly waved his hand. The tens of thousands of soldiers on the city gate tower simultaneously released fire arrows into the sky. Boom, 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 boom. Tens of thousands of arrows glided through the air. Chapter 15:10. Things like corpse cranes, corpse crows, and the like continuously fell from the sky, landing on the ground with clangs of flames. The people on both sides of the city gate tower were mainly in charge of guarding and building a line of defense to prevent these zombies from having the chance to run past from the sides and take a detour around the east and west gates. Compared to their friends who were directly facing the zombie army at the main gate, the mystic cultivators on both sides were slightly more relaxed. In addition, the mystic cultivators who had been mobilized from various places were continuously replenished. After one group of people finished fighting, another group of people would immediately be replaced, and the previous group could rest for at least 4 hours. Fighting from dusk to dawn, the dismembered corpses of the zombies at the northern city gate of the Mo Kingdom capital's fortifications had practically piled up into a mountain. Arbor's eyes narrowed as she gazed at some sparkling things on the sand. Those were the crystal cores that dropped out of the zombies' heads after being killed. She could now confirm that these zombies with crystals in their heads were probably intermediate-level zombies. As for the winged zombie that Mo Lien had struck down from midair, she reckoned that it could already be considered a half-mature intermediate-level zombie. A intermediate-level zombie was probably level 2 or level 3. In her previous life, when she was about 18 years old, she saw these intermediate-level zombies with crystal cores in their heads. At that time, she still wasn't aware that these zombies that had part of the ability to think and could command in battle had actually already evolved to intermediate level. Because not long after, she was captured by Fan Chioha to be experimented on, strictly speaking, her previous life's memory and cognition stopped at about elementary level 5 zombies. She was currently still in the groping stage for intermediate-level zombies. Moreover, even now, she still didn't know whether those sparkling crystals in the zombies' heads were useful to them or not. She only subconsciously collected these crystal cores, based on her good moral character of experiencing poverty and hardship. Let's call them crystal cores for the time being. They looked similar to the crystal cores in Mystic Beast's heads. Of course, the crystal cores in the heads of intermediate-level zombies were clearly much, much smaller than Mystic Beast's crystal cores. Moreover, like Mystic Beasts, not all Mystic Beasts had crystal cores in their heads. The production rate of these crystal cores in the heads of zombies was also quite low. Therefore, all the more they couldn't be wasted. "Sister, what are you doing?" Xiaomi jumped in fright and subconsciously tugged at a certain child who was leaping down from the city. He seemed to be a little too impatient. He didn't expect that when his mind was thinking, "I have to pick up all these crystal cores," his body would start to move involuntarily. Arbor turned his head and blinked innocently at Xiaomi. I didn't do anything. I just wanted to lower my head and look. Look at the scenery." Prince Mo, who was walking over quickly, couldn't help but twitch his mouth. Looking at the little fellow's guilty expression, he didn't even need to guess to know what she wanted to do. Walking to her side, Prince Mo reached out and held her restless body. He lowered his head and looked down at the city gate tower. "Don't be impatient. Once the battle is over, we'll clean up the battlefield." These will all be yours. Xiao Mi, who was forcefully stuffed with dog food, was speechless. May I ask your highness the crown prince and your highness the crown princess, what the hell are you two talking about? Why didn't she understand? Xiao Mu coughed in all seriousness and waved her small paw. I don't really want it either. Yes, that's right. It's your husband who must give it to you. Xiao Mi. Are you two still not done yet? Chapter 15:11. How infuriating. Xiao Mi glared at Northern Prince Mo disapprovingly. Your Highness the Crown Prince, what did you come here for? Hurry and go back. I'll take care of sis here. For some reason, when she saw their honeyed state, her heart felt very, very stifled, as if her mouth was stuffed with dog fur. Even her breathing felt a bit heavy. Why couldn't her Bailey she learn from his good brother, Prince Mo? In terms of treating his girlfriend, the second prince of the Bailey family truly couldn't compare to Prince Mo. Mo Lien looked at Xiao Mi strangely. What was the meaning of this woman's can't breathe expression? Right now, the situation on the battlefield was basically under control. He came to find his wife, but she didn't like him. Humph. Wife, your friend is a bit. Prince Mo pulled Arbor to the side and was about to say a few intimate words to his little wife. However, Huifeng swiftly floated in front of him. Your Highness. The Crown Prince glared fiercely at him. Tactless. Huifeng glanced at the Crown Princess standing to the side and hastily coughed. Your Highness, this subordinate has disturbed you. The death row prisoners are all outside. Should we let them out now? Mo Lien curled his lips. Those familiar with him could practically sense the bloodthirst in this smile. Wait a bit, let's waste another half an hour. After saying this, he looked up at Huifeng again. How are things over there? They're starting to make a move. The Crown Prince nodded in satisfaction. The day he had been waiting for finally arrived. On a day when the entire city was resisting zombies and all attention was focused on the northern city gate, the vassal king of Nan finally couldn't hold back anymore, right? Arbor glanced at the Crown Prince's pensive expression and curiously asked, did something happen? Nothing. While holding her small hand, Crown Prince Mo slowly walked towards the tall tower erected on top of the city gate tower. He then carried her up the tower together. How's the view here? With tens of thousands of corpse puppets, we should be able to collect a few thousand crystal cores. Arbor nodded. I just don't know what it's for. Mo Lien lowered her head to look at her, and couldn't help but laugh. So, you're only aiming for these crystal cores because you don't want to waste them? Okay. Bao Bao, you're such a thrifty daughter-in-law. Mo Lien shamelessly praised her. Arbor immediately nodded in agreement. I also think I'm very thrifty. Actually, I've tried. That crystal core can increase my medicinal efficacy. Arbor's eyes widened when she heard this. No wonder she couldn't feel the slightest energy fluctuation. That was because she wasn't a superhuman. Naturally, she couldn't feel the power within the crystal core. But Mo Lien was different. Did Mo Lien mean that the crystal in the zombie's head could increase the power of special ability users? What level has your medicinal efficacy increased to? She herself didn't have this kind of special ability, so she never knew how this ability was classified. I've probably crossed into the intermediate level. If the entire intermediate level medicinal efficacy is classified into 5 levels, I feel like I should be at the 3rd level right now. The devil grass that could paralyze my body before should already be ineffective if I get hit again. Arbor's eyes brightened. Then your resistance to poison is already very high. Chapter 15:12. One must know that the devil's grass was an extremely potent neurotoxin that could paralyze a person's nerves in a short period of time, which would then affect the limbs and body, causing them to stiffen. But now, even this neurotoxin could do nothing to Mo Lien. Arbor's little head rubbed against his chest, then she suddenly reached out and gave him the small bag of crystal cores that she had collected earlier. All for you. No, you can keep them. If I need them, I will go and collect them myself. I have no use for them, I'll give them all to you. These below are all for you too. Arbor tilted her little head, then pushed the small bag into his arms. You're not allowed to refuse. Okay. Mo Lien laughed as he took the bag and put it into his inner world. He reached out and hugged her, then said softly, Jojo, do you want to see how strong my medicine is? Arbor nodded her little head repeatedly, her little face full of curiosity. Mo Lien smiled mysteriously at her, then suddenly looked up at the sky, at a corpse crane that was flying unsteadily. This corpse crane had separated itself from the group and was flying towards the east, looking like it was running for its life. It had some brains, but unfortunately, in front of Mo Lien, it had no ability to resist at all. Prince Mo raised his hand slightly, and a strong wave of spiritual energy sucked that unlucky corpse crane over. Ah! The corpse crane let out an unpleasant and hoarse cry. Before it could viciously pounce over, Mo Lien's eyes turned cold, and he directly reached out his hand. A strong medicinal fragrance spread out from his body, and his right palm was covered in a layer of white light. Very quickly, that corpse crane's body underwent a terrifying change. It turned from a half-rotten, half-bone-like corpse crane into a pile of rotten minced meat, and this process did not take more than 5 seconds. Arbor watched as this corpse crane rapidly rotted under the effects of the medicine, until it turned into a pile of rotten minced meat, mixed with the dust, and scattered at their feet. She looked up at Mo Lien in shock. However, the man's cold expression faded. He lowered his head and winked at her. Smiling, he asked, Is your husband awesome? Arbor nodded vigorously. This was the first time he realized that special abilities could be so powerful. No wonder Fan Chioha, that pervert, captured 2 pharmacists later on and locked them up in a small dark room just like her, groping and studying their secrets. Jojo, your husband is so powerful. You don't have to worry, okay? Arbor looked at him and thought of the 17 floors of the Tower of Punishment. He nodded reluctantly, but still said, I'm worried. Mo Lien didn't know whether to laugh or cry as she rubbed her little head. Trust me, okay? I do. Arbor nodded. It's good that you believe me. I'll let you watch a wonderful show later, okay? Mo Lien lowered his head and smiled at her. I guarantee that you won't worry about me again after you watch it. A mere Tower of Punishment is nothing to me. Arbor looked at him curiously. What show? At this moment, the battle below had already reached its climax. The fireballs thrown down by the catapults had already ignited rows of flames outside the northern city gate. Fireproof ditches had long been built at the city gate, so there was naturally no need to worry about the fire burning the city walls. A portion of the dismembered zombie corpses that could be seen everywhere had already been burned into piles of ashes. Hui Feng, you can release them now, Prince Mo said indifferently. Chapter 15-13. Release what? Everyone watched as the several dozen people, who had lost all color in their faces from crying, were herded toward the small side door at the northern city gate. Wei Nanfeng, Bailey Shi, and the others on the city gate tower were all stunned, and they hastily descended the city gate tower. Prince Mo held Arbor's small hand and floated to the side of the northern city gate's small side door, where he was met with a pair of wolf puppy-like eyes. He looked over and shot him a contemptuous look. ACI, this wolf puppy, was truly very persistent. Thankfully, his darling was a very strange little girl. ACI had been her enemy from the start, and she had never liked this person. Moreover, this hostile relationship was very difficult to change in the little girl's heart. Prince Mo, what are you doing? Pushing these fools out, are you trying to feed the corpse puppet army? Yas laughed mockingly. Feed them? Assie's words startled everyone, and they abruptly turned to look at the group of crying men and women. Most of them were in the prime of their lives, and there were also a few women among them. However, the most eye-catching one among these people was a slender woman wearing a thin red muslin dress. She should be a rather beautiful woman, but her hair was disheveled and her body was unbearably filthy, as though she had been viciously abused. Release these baits. Hui Feng waved his hand, and soldiers immediately came forward to drag away the crying, screaming, begging, and even fainting men and women. Wei Mingli was among these people. When she discovered that her group was about to be thrown out of the city, her entire face turned pale with fright. She frantically struggled with her arms and screamed under the escort of 2 soldiers, "You can't do this to me, you can't do this to me. I'm one of the second prince's people. I'm..." Wei Mingli was about to be scared silly. She never knew that a person could be so unlucky when they were down on their luck. Ever since she failed to seduce His Highness the Crown Prince, she actually went downhill. First, she was mercilessly thrown into the death row prison by the second prince. No matter how she begged him, she was still mercilessly abandoned. It was only then that Wei Mingli realized that in the eyes of the second prince, no, in the eyes of those in power, she, Wei Mingli, was nothing more than a tiny ant. She didn't even have the chance to fight against fate and say no. Her life was worse than death. She was captured and sent to the death row prison. She was such a beautiful and powerless woman. It was obvious what would happen to her. She was repeatedly humiliated and abused in that dark prison, and her cries for help were ignored. Now that she finally had the chance to see the light of day again, she never imagined that these people wanted to use them, these death row prisoners, to feed the army of corpse puppets. Wei Mingli struggled madly and shouted harshly, "Why are you pushing us out as bait?" A whip landed on her body. The jailer who had escorted them out smiled mockingly at her. "You're a group of prisoners on death row who were originally going to be executed. Do you think you still have a way out?" "No, I'm not a prisoner on death row, I'm not. I'm Wei Mingli, I'm..." Wei Mingli turned her head and immediately saw Arbor, who was standing on the side with a slight frown. Without thinking, she pounced toward Arbor's side. "Little sister Xiao Qiao. Save me, I'm Wei Mingli. Do you still remember me? It's me. Wei Mingli. Granny Nyo's granddaughter. Wei Mingli. It's over." Chapter 15-14. Little Sister Xiao Qiao. Save me, save me, save me. Before Wei Mingli could reach Arbor, 2 soldiers rushed over and forcefully pinned her arms behind her back, forcing her to kneel on the ground. "How dare you offend the crown princess? Take her away." The soldiers held their knives to Wei Mingli's neck and pulled her with brute force. "Don't pull me. Don't pull me. You bunch of bastards, scram. Scram." Wei Mingli probably used every ounce of strength she had as she crazily pushed aside the 2 soldiers beside her and pounced at Arbor, toppling over. "What are you doing?" Arbor looked at this woman who abruptly rushed over in bafflement. He couldn't figure out why this person acted as if they were close friends and knew each other. How could this child still remember Wei Mingli? For a little girl who had faced blindness since young and had grown up slightly better, she could even forget ACI, let alone this Wei Mingli whom she had only met once. She completely couldn't remember, okay? She wasn't the crown prince who could instantly recognize any random Tom, Dick, or Harry that she had met before. Her little brain was only so big, and she still needed to remember more useful techniques. There was really no need to remember the faces of Tom, Dick, or Harry. There was no way she would admit that she was actually just a little face blind. The little fellow stood there in all seriousness and silently glared at Wei Mingli. After the crown prince tugged at his little hand, Arbor also took a small step back. Take her away. Mo Lien coldly swept a glance at Wei Mingli. The latter shuddered and suddenly went on her knees as if she had gone crazy. She kowtowed loudly and said, Your Highness, Your Highness. Please let me go. I was wrong. I know I was wrong. I really know. Wei Mingli wept like a pear blossom with tears, looking extremely miserable and pitiful. I shouldn't have obeyed the second prince's orders and thought of ways to block your path and lure you in. It's my fault, my fault. Please be merciful and spare me this time. She was so regretful that her intestines turned green. His Highness is wise and mighty, how could he be so easily fooled? Second Prince Mo Lu had a hole in his head. He had thought of this lousy idea to trick the crown prince, but in the end, he had tricked her, Wei Mingli, instead. Now, the second prince was angry that she didn't keep the secret and told the crown prince everything. He was so angry that he chased this traitor out of the second prince's residence and even threw her into prison. But what could she do? She was only a weak girl. If it was anyone else, they would have been tied up in a dungeon by a group of vicious people and tortured to extort a confession. Other than confessing properly, they would have no other choice. Actually, Wei Mingli didn't know that second Prince Mo Lu was in a much more miserable state than she was. This fellow's scheme against the crown prince failed, and after being seen through by the crown prince, he embarked on a pitiful path of self-destruction. Now, the few remaining profitable businesses in his hands had all been exterminated by the crown prince. There was no way for him to survive. Rui Pavilion had already changed owners. Even if the second prince wanted to do something else, he probably wouldn't have the money to spare in the future. Wei Mingli also didn't know that second Prince Mo Lu hated that he couldn't tear her to shreds right now. The crown prince didn't have much of a reaction to Wei Mingli's sobbing. On the other hand, Arbor's small face completely scrunched up, and his gaze landed firmly on Wei Mingli's face. So you're that female scoundrel who blocked the crown prince's path. Arbor's gaze instantly chilled as he sized Wei Mingli up. Chapter 15:15. Woman. Female scoundrel. When Wei Mingli heard Arbor call her that, she couldn't help but shudder in anger. However, she kept her mouth shut and didn't say anything. She didn't dare utter a single word to refute Arbor. Because she knew very well that the crown prince's current expression was very unsightly. It was a grim expression that said he wanted to immediately push her out to feed the zombies. She really was a bit scared. Why is she among the prisoners on death row? The crown prince was also perplexed. He had indeed ordered for a portion of the extremely vicious prisoners on death row to be gathered and pushed out of the city gate tower as bait. However, although this woman Wei Mingli had offended him, her crime didn't warrant death. He was just curious as to why she was among the prisoners on death row. Replying to Your Highness. This woman was sent here by His Highness the Second Prince. She has been staying in the Ministry of Justice's death row prison for this period of time, one of the jailers who came along quickly and cleverly replied. There were two meanings behind his words. Mo Lu had sent her over, and Mo Lu hoped that this woman would die. They didn't act on their own and followed the crown prince's instructions to bring out a portion of the prisoners on death row. Unfortunately, this woman called Wei Mingli just happened to be among this group of prisoners on death row. Mo Lien frowned slightly and waved her hand. Since it's second royal brother's intention, then push her out as bait as well. When Prince Mo said this, his expression was placid without the slightest ripple. When Wei Mingli heard this, she instantly felt like the world was falling apart. She originally thought that His Highness the Crown Prince would definitely release her after learning the truth. After all, from the Crown Prince's tone, he didn't pay much attention to an insignificant minor character like her. Besides, she was just a pitiful woman. Shouldn't His Highness the Crown Prince take pity on a weak woman like her? Of course, as long as she left this wretched place and found a way out, why would she worry about not finding a chance to exact revenge in the future? She remembered every detail of how the second prince treated her. There was also the crown prince and this stoic-faced crown princess in front of her. Also, there were also those stinky men in prison. There were too many. There were truly too many people who had wronged her. She would definitely get back at them one day. But now, she actually didn't have the chance. Why? Why? Wei Mingli struggled in terror as she glared at the crown prince in astonishment. Second imperial brother wants you dead, Prince Mo reluctantly explained. Of course, I can't let my brother down. The corners of Wei Nanfeng and the others' mouths twitched. Could this brat be any more shameless? TSK, since when did this master value his own brother so much? He had never seen or heard of such a thing before. Pull him away. Mo Lien waved her hand, and Wei Mingli suddenly acted as if she had lost her mind. She pushed a soldier to the ground with all her might and rushed to Arbor's side. You bitch, I really didn't expect that you would disregard kinship like this and incite His Highness the Crown Prince to deal with me. Arbor! Exclamation point. Everyone was speechless. What did I instigate? I really want to ask you, how did I instigate the Crown Prince? From the beginning to the end, she had been standing here and watching the show. She hadn't said more than 3 sentences. How could she burn her head like this? Xiaomi couldn't help but burst into laughter. She felt that from her angle, Miss Zhao's small expression was very comical and amusing. Chapter 15-16. Also, what was with the kinship she was talking about? Seeing that Wei Mingli was lunging over, there was no need for Arbor to do anything. The Crown Prince directly sent a flying kick over without the slightest bit of protective feelings for the fairer sex and sent Wei Mingli tumbling over, landing head first on the ground with a thud. Arbor was perplexed and looked up at His Highness the Crown Prince. She's your relative? Everyone turned their heads away speechlessly. Prince Mo couldn't help but laugh. She seemed to be lunging at you just now. I don't know her. Arbor shook her head solemnly. Everyone was well aware of her temperament and rolled their eyes one after another. Especially Xiaomi. She knew her younger sister too well. How could a child who couldn't even recognize young Master ACI recognize a passerby in front of her? Wasn't that a joke? You don't know me. You said you don't know me. Before Arbor could finish speaking, Wei Mingli turned to look at Arbor furiously. The Crown Prince's kick just now was a bit heavy, and she couldn't get up after lying on the ground for a long time. She could only turn her head to glare at him. I said I'm Granny Nyo's granddaughter. Granny Nyo is from the same village as your mother, Wei Ziqin. What kind of relative was this? There was no way they could even reach the end of it. Arbor's originally stoic little face instantly turned incomparably sinister. There's always some baffling people coming to me to claim kinship. The Qiao family was like this previously. The Mu family of China was like this later on. This way something in front of her was also like this. It was as if she was some cat or dog. It didn't matter if she was abandoned, but when she was happy and wanted to claim her back, she had to be deeply grateful. It was as if she had to happily acknowledge anyone who was her relative. Was that the case? Was she such a casual person? Have you asked for my opinion? Have you respected my wishes? Who do you think you are? Do I have to acknowledge you just because you say you want to claim kinship? The sudden cold anger, the icy tone, and the emotionless eyes instantly made the group of children who wanted to laugh all suppress their laughter in their hearts. The little guy seemed to be angry. Wei Nanfeng and the rest felt that it was better for them not to laugh, lest they add fuel to the fire and be ridiculed by the little thing for no reason. However, her words didn't seem to be completely targeted at Wei Mingli. It was as if she was venting all the pent-up anger in her heart at Wei Mingli. Do I have to happily acknowledge someone who I wouldn't have contacted for hundreds of years when they suddenly pop up and claim to be mine? Do we still have to serve you? Do you think there's such an easy thing in this world? Arbor's cold gaze swept over Wei Mingli. Relatives. Heh. Arbor sneered, the Kayaben family who claim to be my relatives are probably all dead in the western wastelands. There are also some people who claim to be my relatives. Sooner or later, they will die in my hands. What about you? What do you think, as my relative? What kind of fate awaits you? Those Tom, Dick, and Harry relatives of mine don't seem to be people with long lives. There was absolute silence all around. There were so many people on the city gate tower fighting the zombies downstairs, but when their little crown princess released an extremely icy aura, everyone silently shut their mouths and even started to lower their breathing. Throw her down. Chapter 15-17. A furious rebuke exploded in everyone's ears like a sudden clap of thunder. Everyone's hearts inexplicably trembled along with it. They didn't know, it was their misconception. They kept feeling that every time the little crown princess got angry, it was as if the earth quaked and the mountains swayed, scaring everyone so much that they didn't dare to move a muscle. Wei Mingli's pupils contracted, and she hastily shrieked, "What are you doing? Let go of me! Let go! Ah! You can't treat me like this! Arbor, Arbor! You slut! How can you face your mother by doing this? Ah!" Wei Mingli only felt as if she had suddenly lost all gravity as she was abruptly thrown down from the city gate tower, smashing into the battlefield. The last thing she saw was the little girl's icy gaze, which contained a trace of mockery and was looking at her without any warmth. How could there be such a ruthless little girl in this world? She had already brought up Wei Ziqin, this great Buddha. Logically speaking, on account of her mother, she wouldn't touch her, Wei Mingli, no matter what. Why would she still throw her down? How could she know that the thorn in Arbor's heart called the Divine Province's Mu clan had truly pierced her too deeply? Upon hearing the word relative, she thought of the Divine Province's Mu clan's 7th Master Mu and that repulsive Old Bai. Although Old Bai was already dead, the Divine Province's Mu clan absolutely wouldn't let her off. Therefore, she needed to construct a large-scale shielding talisman array above the Mo Kingdom capital. After this talisman array was constructed, it could effectively prevent people from the 6 prefectures and 3 provinces from using special passageways and spatial transportation talisman arrays to come to the Mo Kingdom capital for at least 5 years. There were only a few fixed locations in the capital that could allow people from the 6 prefectures and 3 provinces to transport over. She had already asked Mo Lien about this. This location wasn't random, and it was normally within the capital of several large countries. In addition, in order to avoid Heavenly Law's eyes, 99% of the cultivators from the upper realm who used special passageways and spatial talisman arrays to transport over were very low-key and wouldn't cause too much of a commotion. Thus, when the time came, she only needed to draw a few more talisman arrays and hand them over to Wei Nanfeng, Bailey Shi, and the others. At least, she could be at ease for 5 years. As for 5 years later, Arbor sneered in his heart. If 5 years were not enough for her to grow to the point where she could fight against the Mu family of the Divine Prefecture, then her growth was too slow. Previously, when he made a bet with 7th Master Mu and said 10 years, 7th Master Mu's eyes revealed a very incredulous look. She must have thought that it was impossible for her to catch up with the Mu family of the Divine Land within 10 years. However, the real number of years she had set for herself was 5 years. The Mu family of the Divine Prefecture, Humph, is nothing more than this. Compared to her, she had only one at the starting line. Who said that she couldn't catch up to her later? If he wanted to completely control his own fate, he had to stand above all the other forces. At that time, it would be up to her whether she wanted to recognize this family or not. No one could force her. Because forcing her would be useless. It would only deepen her reaction. I don't know if you're prepared to die. Arbor turned around and walked to the edge of the gate tower with a frosty expression. Wei Nanfeng and his group inexplicably trembled their small bodies. What a scary girl. It wasn't easy being her family's relative either. And at this moment, that group of death row prisoners had already been thrown outside the city, attracting the attention of a large group of zombies in the front row. Chapter 15:18. Now was the time. Mo Yen stroked Arbor's head and instructed her to stay here before walking towards the side door first. Open the side door. Team 1's body cultivators, follow me. Yu Xiu raised his arm and shouted as he quickly followed behind the crown prince. The leader of the Dragon Saliva Guard, Yu Xiu, led around 500 robust body cultivators out of the side door with the crown prince. This team was like a sharp knife that cut straight into the middle of the zombie army. Immediately, the corpse puppet army, which had a rather large lineup, was scattered in two directions. The mystic cultivators on the city gate tower quickly filled in the gaps and bombarded the zombies that were scattered to the sides with mystic energy. Everyone watched excitedly as the Crown Prince led his team forward and disposed of no less than 100 zombies in a matter of minutes. His Highness the Crown Prince's strength made people feel a bit puzzled. This man who appeared gentle on the surface was like an abyss. No matter how deep you dug, he always gave people the feeling that he was bottomless. Huifeng jumped down from the city gate tower and handed the latest news from the hidden night pavilion to Prince Mo. Your Highness, the 12th Prince has already led Hui Fan and 2,000 royal guardsmen to intercept them. A cold smile surfaced on Mo Lian's lips. Suddenly, he creased his brows and looked up at the indistinct purple-crimson lightning bolts on the horizon. Heavenly Law, what's the hurry for? That's right, now was the time. The Mo Lian seal that he had suppressed for so many years was finally going to be released. An hour ago. Commandery Princess Yi-Pen had suddenly been taken out of the vassal prince's court and locked up in the woodshed. This made Commandery Princess Yi-Pen, who had been feeling very vexed these past few days, feel a deep sense of despair. She threw herself at the woodshed's door hysterically and pounded on it with all her might. She could only hear Su Er's intermittent cries outside the door in annoyance, but it was completely useless. At the same time, the vassal prince of Nan's court was filled with rows of men with red kerchiefs on their heads. The great king is licentious and tyrannical. The crown prince dotes on his treacherous consort. Now, he has caused the people of northern Mo to be destitute and zombies to run rampant everywhere. It's time for us to retaliate. The vassal prince of Nan, Cho Fu, commanded, Red Scarf Guards, my brave warriors. Are you afraid of death? I'm not afraid. I'm not afraid. I'm not afraid. All right. The vassal prince of Nan, Cho Fu, shouted angrily. Then let's pick up our weapons for Bei-moi. For our poor people. Kill. 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 The 2,000 Red Scarf Guards were slowly nurtured by him over many years. As the saying goes, soldiers are trained for 1,000 days to be used in a single moment. Since the great king was unrighteous and gave him a withered woman to be his wife, he had no choice but to accept it. Then, he naturally didn't need to talk to them about benevolence, righteousness, propriety, wisdom, and trust. Of course, the current Cho Fu completely did not remember that he had previously wholeheartedly wanted to marry Commandery Princess Yi-Pen. He could only think of the humiliation he had suffered from that woman when he had consummated his marriage with her. No, it was the Crown Prince who humiliated her. Because that damned woman actually called him Crown Prince when she was making love with him. It really dealt a blow to his self-confidence as a man. He also occasionally recalled the unfair treatment he had received on the day of his wedding, as well as how the entire vassal prince of Nan's estate had become the laughingstock of the entire Mo kingdom capital. It was all this muddle-headed great king's fault. Since that was the case, then don't blame him for being heartless and unrighteous. You're tuning into the Han Li's Wuxia Adventures YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.